Free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
When I begin now, I'm just going to do a short piece to the camera for the people who aren't here, so they don't have to listen to the full, however long it's going to be, 1.5 hour or with interval 2-hour session, and then we'll go for the main event after that. So, it's on, yeah. Oh, it's already rolling. Okay, so thank you very much everybody for coming today, and some people have come quite a considerable distance, and even if you've only come from Nottingham, thanks for turning up. As we can see, the numbers are getting bigger and growing each time we have a meeting, and so the aim for the end of the year is to have football stadiums filled. So that's where it needs to go, and it's only by you referring what I'm saying to somebody else on the basis of please come along with me to the next one, can we grow it? So that's the aim, and only if it makes sense, and only if I'm not tripping myself up, but more importantly not tripping you up, will that happen. So, you know, I have to stand on the credibility that I'm trying to deliver. So that having been said, this is concerning the website for the people who haven't been able to attend today, and to save you all going through a 1-hour video to see what the salient points are. The main thing with the website is, for those who don't know, it's www.wearebank.com, not co.uk. It's taken the best part of a week to put it back together. It's now operated off a secure server. The main thing to emphasise at the moment is please be patient, because the way of registration is set up deliberately to make it quite simple, so that each compartment that you go through, initially you'll be asked to join, and then you put, I think, your first name, your second name in, or your family name in, then I think your email address, there's a capture button, and then you press submit or join. That then sends an email back to you, which you then click on, and it takes you then back to the website where more detailed information is required. So you run through that more detailed information, and part of one of the areas is either username or something that's an Americanism called an avatar, which just means what you want to call yourself by, and then trades or services that you would like to offer. Once you've done that, at the moment, when you press that button, nothing's coming back to you. And that's because secure passwords are being generated for everybody that's registered. And what's happening is that the data capture and the gateway are kept separately now. So before we didn't have this. So in effect what that means is the data that's coming in onto the website isn't stored on the website, it's been stored in a completely separate area, so that if there is any further involvement by anyone else to try and interrupt the flow of the website, the worst that we ever will lose is maybe 30 minutes of data or an hour of data. That's about it, I think, that we're covering on that. So the username will be generated, the email, get this right, the password will be generated, it will be sent to you, and then you will be able to log on securely, and there will be an area there which will show your promissory note, it will show the amount of that you have either earned or you have generated. It will also show any checks that you have signed, how they have been presented or how they've been cleared, and there will be a running tally, so that from the promissory note that you submitted, it will be a positive and negative account flow, and it will show that that is being counted down. We're also putting a section in there for the banks, so that the banks can actually come on and look at the validity of the instruments, and also what we are saying we are doing. So that's all being built out. It's taking a while because there's not too many people doing it, but as soon as it's ready, it will be greatly improved, and you will be able to see all the transactions. You'll be able to see how you're managing. Also, there'll be an area for you in your own your private section to show the contribution that you made, or the earnings that you've credited to paying down your promissory note from your 9 till 5 or whatever other work you're contributing. So there'll be an actual active management of the system. So that's about it for that part now. We don't need to cover it all again, and so we're going to just pause that there, and then we'll get on with the main event.
Debt Free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
Okay, so let's begin. Thank you very much for coming today. We've got quite a good attendance. Hopefully, everything you hear today will make sense. Could I just have a show of hands for those people who have already either joined through the old system or have registered on the new website? Okay, so that's a very good percentage. So for the people who sort of joined in the old days, that's prior to the evening of the 6th going into the morning of the 7th of May, we have your details, and invariably we have your promissory notes. Those people who have joined and registered on the new website, that's www.wearbank.com, that information is all being populated, and what we've also done is to ask the previous people who'd already joined under the old system to visit the site again and re-register, because what we're creating this time is with the wearbank.com site a system whereby you feed the information into us, and then we push out to you what we need you to do next. So instead of people asking multiple questions, what do I need to do next, it'll simply be under, I think at the moment it's under the community button, it says join or join movement. You click on that and it takes you through this process. So we're going to try and make that will become quite streamlined, and at every point you will be instructed, what the next procedure is. What we shouldn't forget is that predominantly what we are creating here is this re-movement with a banking facility attached to it. So ultimately, if the banking facility was no longer there and disappeared, you would still have the ability to be able to, should we say, make some realistic change within the country for the better. And that's all predicated on the idea of you as supposedly free individuals being able to apply your self-determination with what's called fully informed consent within a so-called democratic environment, which we don't have at the moment. But we're not here really to go through all of the constitutional and too much democratic process today. It's really just to say where the Weir Bank scenario has gone. Now, there's a lot of people that thought, with what happened around about the 6th or 7th when the website was taken down and the PayPal account sort of frozen or seized, and then my bank account has the same thing. As of yesterday, Nationwide still wouldn't tell me, or said they couldn't tell me, who was responsible for my personal account being seized, which I think is quite strange when they invariably know everything, or they'll come up with an excuse. So there were no excuses. They just said they didn't know. So this then puts us into a very polarized structure, because I can assure you that even a 10-year-old child looking at this fairly dispassionately could see that here we are trying to make change lawfully, or through a consensual process, and the powers that be are deliberately coming along and trying to stop it at every juncture. So it screams out that obviously we don't live in a free and fair environment. We don't have any control over the mechanisms that are used in our daily lives. And when we decide as a consensual group to try and change it, someone comes along and says, whoa, 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 no. So we all know it, and we talk about it and we reference about it. We go on to chat boards and we go on to Facebook and we make our complaints. But ultimately, the only thing, as I've said repeatedly, that is going to change this is people in numbers making their voices known through either what we're doing here now through a financial channel, or from a politically motivated arena for change. And so, if anyone hasn't seen the manifesto for Removement, it is a fairly, what's called, liberating, overriding, universal principle. I actually put that down as something called loop, and in French it means wolf. A loop. So this liberating, overriding, universal principle, it really stipulates that you and we all should be allowed to live our lives free from external interference or anyone, should we say, imposing statutory or arbitrary rules and regulations on us without our consent. And it's based on common law principles, and it's fairly egalitarian. It doesn't matter whether you're a Muslim, it doesn't matter whether you're of the Jewish faith or whether you're a Tibetan. It's an equal funding, and it's an equal proposition for everybody. So that's as simple as it is. Then from this liberating, overriding, universal principle comes just a question, very simple. Do I have the right to self-determination in my life, to make my own rules, only to be bound by a contract that I might willingly want to engage in between you and me, or you and me, or alternatively, occasionally, I might wish to abrogate that sovereignty, that personal sovereignty of mine, to an outside organisation, let's say for military service, or to protect the community, or to engage in some type of project that would serve everyone and anyone. So, that being said, then fine. You could give that service over for 30 days or 60 days, or until the expiry of your desire to remain sort of straight-jacketed into the agreement. But it's still an agreement, and it's between you and the person you're making it. So apart from that, this overriding principle allows you to go into an area or arena where we do really have this aspect of self-determination. So that being said, it's no more complicated than that. It's quite an often touted maxim, and it doesn't need to be more complicated, but that's really where we need to be, I think, taking us as we march forward. So that having been said, we really then need to, as far as the removement aspect is concerned, is to sort of identify where this enemy is, or what the state is. Because the state is quite an amorphous concept. You can't really find it, you can't define it, really. It's a group of people somewhere who are claiming to have the authority of, and they impose these various rules and regulations on everybody, and we all seem to go along with it. So what I'd just like to cover now is there was a leaflet that some people had seen. It was downloadable on the old website. It isn't available at the moment, but I think we'll have a reprint of it. These were sort of like the foundation political statements for Removement. This was back in 2006, 2007, when I was actively campaigning to get our old friend Tony Blair brought to some type of justice in the British courts. Not being naive about it, but just thinking that, you know, if you put an action in progress, then something would come out of it, or people would be forced to address it, and so how wrong I was. But the opening statement reads, for those who haven't seen it before, British government means you harm. It operates as a lyingly corrupt and elitist criminal enterprise. You, yes you, have a legal, constitutional and moral obligation to act against it. Failure to do so renders you complicit in its criminality with no right of complaint. So it's a fairly standard proposition that if you go along with it, then you're consenting to it and to everything that it allows. Now, that's really preaching to the converted, I think, with everyone that's in here today. It's just that we don't seemingly have the ability to put this in action. Individually now, because the group numbers are maybe only 50, 60, 80 or 100. So this is the importance of why we need to grow the groups. And for example, there's the group in towards Warrington, or the Dignity Alliance group, and then there's another group down south, and there's various other groups around the country, in the Bristol area, and in the northwest. So we just really need to start bringing them together so that we can actually start making a meaningful collective when we meet in reasonable sized groups. So the overriding point of this was really to try and identify who the enemy is, because we might see ourselves as victims from time to time, whether that's the ticket on the window, or it's the council tax, or the bailiffs, or whoever's coming to impose this statutory tyranny on us. But ultimately, we've got to try and identify who pays the politicians and where does it come from. So the quotations that I'll just run through that were put in this leaflet have been said over and over again historically. And I issued it public enemy number one, and it was the bankers. It's pure and simple, the bankers. There's enough been said about it, but what we've got to start bringing home to these bankers, these people that at the moment have been phoning me at the rate of 5 a day, and started recently saying, well, how do we clear our checks? Yeah? Do you want us to fax them to you? Initially they were saying they didn't want anything to do with us, or they were arguing the toss about you're not a bank, your sort code's not legitimate. But in about the last week, I've had NatWest Legal Department from London on the phone, the head of the clearing from NatWest in London. I've also had the legal department of HSBC on the phone, and various people claiming to be representing banks, asking what do they need to do now. We've had Canadian International Bank of Commerce, Chrysler Canada again, London Borough of Bromley again, Scarborough Borough Council, South East Utility Water. So there's sufficient coming in, but considering the number of checks that have gone out, there's a definite policy now at the moment, it seems, that the phone started or stopped ringing as much as it had been. There's quite considerable anecdotal evidence on either the chat boards or on various sites to show two things happening. Maybe three things happening. Quite a few have said that their supposed liabilities have been cleared. Some people are saying they've been cleared and then they've been reapplied again. And some people are saying that they've refused, the payee has refused the cheque or sent it back, either with claims that either Weir Bank has a non-existent currency called the RE and therefore it's not valid, or the sort code isn't valid, or various accusations of fraud. Yeah? So just to clarify the fraud point for everyone out there, the only way the cheque could be fraudulent if it's trying to pass off by leading the individuals within the chain in which it is meant to be sort of valid, to be a genuine article that someone else might be using or presenting to either annul a debt or to create money. And it can't possibly be, because by their very own arguments, the sort code doesn't exist. The bank doesn't supposedly exist. The account number, which is the 8s, is a trust account number. So with all of these things, yet they still try and come along and say, oh no, this is fraudulent, yet they don't return the checks, or they want to hold on to them for whatever reason. So what's obviously happening in the background is some of them are clearing the checks without actually getting in touch with us. So we've even given them a fax number now that they can use. So for those people who say, well, they haven't heard, some people are actually phoning up and saying, well, can you tell me the status of the account? And they're saying it's still at whatever it was before. And others, they're saying, no, it's been cleared. I had a conversation, not this Friday just gone, but the Friday before, of a chap who, I will provide you with his name, but not on camera. And he phoned me asking another question, and I said, well, what had happened about the liability that you supposedly had with HMRC? And he said, oh, no, I spoke to them on Friday in the morning, and I'd submitted the cheque 10 days ago, and they confirmed over the phone that it had been cleared. And that was 92,000 worth of VAT liability. Now, HMRC hadn't contacted me. A lot of what's happening is the hotline phone will ring. It says private number, and as soon as I answer, they hang up. That's what they're doing. They're just either haven't got the courage to see it through, or they're just asking. They're asking whatever, But, oh, sorry, wrong number, and then they might try and come back. So this is really just to say, with what we're trying to do, there's never going to be, a crystal highway where they're making it clear. What I've said repeatedly to them is that we are genuinely the banker's prayer. They can't do any more credit manipulation without us, because the banks are bankrupt, they're maxed out. The European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank for International Settlements. So just to try and see where this is all coming from, they're maxed out. Yeah? The only thing they've got left to go on is where they want to take it next. And where they want to take it next is by the 1st of January 2018, cashless. That's what's going around now officially in Germany, France and Spain. 1st of January 2008. Small bills only. €5 denomination for things like bread, ice cream, a little bit. But if you don't have your credit card, you're buggered. You're not going to be able to go anywhere or do anything. And since I've been living like that for the last 5 days, trying to get into a travel lodge with cash, you can't do it. Or then I get the passport produced and then they allow me in, but then I want to go on the internet, but I can't, because you have to go on the internet via a credit card payment. So it is truly not a direction that we really want to be going. So the next thing that they're trying to take the market towards after this maxed out, so we say, fraudulent counterfeiting, keeping the presses going, is these things called special drawing rights. And the special drawing rights are just magic level number 3 on the illusion of where money comes from. Okay? So, I've mentioned this before, but I try and mention it every time. For those people who might be thinking in the room, but, where is the money coming from? And what's the operational, clear ground on which we sit? Well, it's twofold, really. It's the fact that you provide the promissory note. Okay? So your promise is either something or it's nothing. It cannot be both. There's something called disassociation. Or you can't stand on a black square and a white square at the same time, because you need to make a decision which one you're on if you're looking at it from some sort of energetic point of view. So the government doesn't have that, because what it has is an imposition on you under this societally implied contract or a constructive trust or however you want to dress it up, delivered from the time of birth, all the benefits that you receive or that your parents receive in the form of child benefit, NHS services, free schooling, free milk, a road to travel on, a public library to go into. And so you're in that. That's the deal. That's the farmer providing food for the livestock. So arguing to them that, well, that doesn't apply to me, or this is not where I want to come from, I'm Peter of England in your court, it's like the horse arguing at the fence about what's going to be done with the foal. The farmer can stand there and listen, but at the end he isn't going to say anything other than, yeah, okay, and he walks away, and then next thing the foal's sold and taken off to wherever. So this is the thing we're living in, and we hear it often. We hear it in the courts, we hear it at trials of public figures, and the judges usually say things like, we're imposing this sentence upon you because you've betrayed the public trust. Yeah? But that's the public trust, is the trust. It's, what was that name of that judge at the family court who...
Godsmark. Godsmark.
Godsmark? Yeah. I don't know which God that is. But these people have one instruction only. Defend that trust at all cost. Nothing else. So they're on a hiding to nothing. They step into that arena and that career, and from that point on, you're in. It's like a made man in the mafia, or when they go hunting with the horses and hounds and the fox hunting, they get blooded. And that's like an initiation or a rite of passage. And I know I keep mentioning this time and time again, but the people who are primarily controlling the pyramid are the Masons, the Mafia, and the military. Yeah? Now you've got this horrible, fossilized, feudal concept of Elizabeth and Philip and Kate and William and all these parasites sitting at the top of, and that's the monarchy. And that's what we're all supposed to worship, and it's the sign of success in our society. Because everybody's looking for the knighthood, the OBE, the recognition from these people. And when you actually look at it, any society that had any meaningful input into it should have got rid of them hundreds of years ago, not now. And people say, oh, well, it's just a bit of window dressing and they don't really have any control. Yeah, tell that to Alan Sugar, and tell that to Richard Branson, and tell that to the Duke of Kent. Yeah, tell that to Philip. Tell that to these people who are all archmasons. So, number of Masonic lodges in the country, 10,000 roughly. Number of Freemasons in each lodge, not counting the female side of it, because usually the wives have got a bit more influence than your ordinary. About 100. Yeah, they're suffering the numbers crisis at the moment, and they're trying to go on a recruiting drive. So that puts us to about, give or take, 1 million. 64 million people in the country. Take out the children, very young, up to the age of maybe 15, 17. Take out the elderly, and you've probably got 1 in 50 in very, very key positions that have amazing influence. So this control is backed up within the financial community and then within Parliament. So that's what we're really identifying. What is it that we've got to go against, and what do we have to have the knowledge of upturning to make us successful in what we're doing? Because we don't really need to go onto the street. We don't really need to do too much, but all we need to do is to bring some type of knowledge when we're presented with these people. So, I don't know, the people in this room here, potentially I would say maybe there's at least 20% who are probably, in the throes of either being taken to court, being asked to go, or will end up there within, the foreseeable future. And when you walk into that arena, that's really what you're energetically coming up with. And if you're going in as you, or you, or you, or you, or Tom, yeah, you're going to get buried. Yeah. So this is why you've got to have some type of identifiable, I don't mean buried, but you know what I mean, they didn't do, and I said this repeatedly, what would have happened is, Jesus himself could have been sitting there with the most lucid argument, with almost, I don't know, just the perfect law, even quoted. And the guy would have just said at the end, it's not relevant. Selective conclusioning. Look at the Diana investigation. 6 months of everything, and in the end they go, yeah, it was just unlawful killing. So, I think, so this is my personal opinion, and I think hopefully maybe yours as well. What you need to be doing is, when you are confronted with this situation, whether it's in your car, whether it's a policeman pulling you over, not for those people who've gone down the free man road of arguing, I'm not bound by this, I've sent an affidavit in, or I call myself this and I don't want to enter into any contract with you. We can make it all very short by having some type of identifiable logo or badge or something we can wear, or a little book that goes, this is what I'm about. So you don't have to get into a 20-minute discussion with him, at the side of the road. Or when you walk into court, the judge is going, oh, God, no, not another one of them. For example, there are 10,000 checks out there at the moment. 10,000, right? So 10,000 flittering around, all either written or not written, or waiting to be written. And can you imagine what degree of energy and time that's going to take up if everybody decides, right, whatever the process is that you were trying to impose upon me, I'd like to spend my time in court with the magistrate for at least an hour. So you've got the 10,000 hours alone, plus all the pre-work for it, and the fallout work, just for them to process those. So this is part of the idea. Not to worry and be too analytical of how it would all work, but the eggs need throwing out there against the wall, and then we'll process it as it goes along. And what I mean by that is, if I'd have waited at the beginning to have a team of people together and the data capture and all the bells and whistles put together in a way, we'd have been forever waiting for it to go, and it wouldn't have happened, because what happens is, people go, oh, well, have you thought about that? Or what about happens if that? And then you get so jostled left and right that you lose your faith in it, and you think, oh, well, because I wanted to do this in 2012. So that website, in part, has been there, not in its full antagonistic form, but since 2012. And just to say, the way it is at the moment, it is not a patch on what it was when it was the werebank.co.uk. It's a bit cleaner, but it doesn't have my personality put in it. But that will come in time over the next week or so. So that's really what we've got to do here. I'm asking people to man up. We've got to step up to the plate, and we're going to have to do it. And this is the declaration. As long as I'm still out here and I'm still walking around doing what I'm doing, this is going to roll. Because lots of people from the 6th or the 7th were saying, oh, and I got fed up and I had to sort of get in touch with them. Oh, we hear you're going to be arrested. Yeah? I hear you've been arrested. That's not the sort of thing you want on your phone at 6 o'clock in the morning when you wake up and you think, why is that phone making the ping? Oh, I hear you. Oh, God. So, we'll pick up now, because I think we just got to pause this so we can do the next segment, but I'll pick up on that point in a moment.
Debt Free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
Okay, so this is is everybody a bit too warm? Is it getting too warm for people? Yeah. Is there any chance of opening the door? Just wait. Maybe? No? Okay. Fire door? Yeah, good. So, this is the point I want to try and make. because it's a very important point, because there are whistleblowers out there, and so if you could look at me as no more than a whistleblower, not all of them have been arrested, not all of them are languishing in Guantanamo, and why I put my orange shirt on today is in part as a bit of a badge of honour for the people who are sitting there in that infernal place. Because this is what the elite, with their, their Nazi Zionist jackboot, want to force on people. Yeah? The fear that don't step out of line or you're going to get it. That's why they'll spend 100,000 pursuing somebody on a £25 parking fee. Because it's the nature of the game. It's what they need to do. So, what's going to happen is, over time, people looking back at this video are going to say, oh, look how he tempted fate with what he did. Or, he might have been a bit more sort of clairvoyant or savvy than we thought. So, what we'll do now is we'll because I do tread quite a spiritual path on this, we'll throw the dice and we'll put the cards up and we'll see where they fall. And that's as good as I can deliver. Okay? So, it's them or us. And when I said in 2007, I'm coming back to this country to polarise it and split it right down the middle. And you're either standing on that side or you're standing on the other. If you're standing not on our side, I don't wish you any harm, but you're not playing our game. So, leave us alone. Let us get on with our banking. Let us get on with the way we want to trade. But also, don't have us in your trumped up, priest of gala, black robe wearing, commercial courts trying to force it down our throat. So this is why I did, and go back and look on my YouTube channel. I put down in 2012 how to dismantle a state, how to go in to the choke points in society and immobilise them. And one of the big immobilisation points is the judges. Because the police will arrest you and give you a parking fine, or you've breached an average road speed 50, and you're in court and there's the judge. Now they have to enforce what the policy is up above them. And invariably the judges are members of lodges. The Bank of England has its own lodge. The Fraud Office and the Metropolitan Police have their own Masonic lodge. HM Treasury has its own lodge. The Mansion House, you see these speeches by Oliver Gideon Osborne or the previous Chancellor, whoever he was. They're all in the Mansion House, speaking there, and as you see them coming in, all the floors are black and white tiles, all made out like the police band on, like the checks on the cars. Yeah, it's all the same, and it's global, and it's institutionalized. So I understand that better than they do. I've studied it. I've gone down avenues which I can in a way thank David Icke for in 1998 when I met him in Birmingham, when he was talking to people, maybe about as many as there were in this room. And so, I read it and I investigated it and I found out what made it tick and I verified it. And so, their entire system is built. It's built on deceit, and it's built on lies, on coercion, and on duress. And there are lots of people, whistleblowers, that will attest to it. So I'm just trying to keep the scene going here. That when you're on the telephone to the people at these banks or credit companies or bailiff companies, or your county council about your council tax, or anything that's imposing upon you, where they say that they have the right to impose a fine or a penalty or a lack of privilege or withdrawal of a right, okay? If you want to stay in their world, you go on to what's called Uniform Commercial Code, Article 9. It's what's called a securitized interest. So if anybody is trying to impose a right, withdraw a service or a privilege, or it's got any financial cost to you, there are very strict tenures or aspects of what they need to comply with before that can be done. and it's under commercial law. So all I'm saying is, if you're in that area, something maybe you should have a look at, UCC Article 9. But apart from that, we've got to bring home to these bank tellers, the cashiers, and the other people propping up the organisation, including the judges, including the police. And if you went to Tom's court meeting on May Day, yeah, you saw the police there, and you saw all the people outside, and many people were addressing them as, how can you do what you're doing? Don't you understand that, you should be arresting the people that side, not looking to defend against us? So the police also need educating. So there's going to be some sort of, I'll look into what I'm going to do there, but that needs to be something that's addressed, because that's the point. That these people are propping up this regime, so we don't need a regime change in Baghdad or Libya. Yeah? We don't need it in South America, or we don't need it in Syria. We need it here. Yeah? The regime needs to change here. And it's no different than any of these other South American juntas. Cameron, did he win the election? I don't know anyone in the world that voted for him. And he won. How do they do that? But he won. There was a very interesting article the day after in the Daily Telegraph from the people's house I was staying at. The guy was mystified. He did quite a good article. He said, wow, I make an apology. How did we get it all wrong? We're supposed to be the people giving you the news. We consulted the opinion polls, or the polls, and we did the exit polls and things like this, and we've been saying it was going to be like this and that, and it was completely wrong. How did it happen? So what we've got to do is we've got to sort of be intelligent and get some of the right answers, which will be all presented to you for a choice, and the ones that you feel particularly comfortable with, on wearebank.com, so that you can actually inform the teller and the cashier and anyone that's propping up this banking this banking organisation, which is responsible for the tyranny and the genocide and the crimes against humanity and general war crimes, that they can't step forward any further under what's called plausible deniability, because that's one of the get-outs. I didn't know. It was the old one that Nazi Germany used, or the populations of Nazi Germany after the war. We didn't know what was going on, but many of them did. So, just to put this in perspective, anybody heard of a guy called John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman? Right. Everybody should, but if they don't, I'll just actually read. Very good chat. He's taking on Chevron at the moment, and Exxon, I think, in what's called Amazon Watch. So he's a whistleblower par excellence, and he had his sort of decision, I think in 2001, when he saw the so-called 9/11 atrocity, and he'd been warned off consistently not to, should we say, reveal or whistleblow on what he'd been doing and how he did it. But he says he decided to do it because when I think it was his granddaughter or his niece or somebody, might have been his daughter actually, came up and was talking to him about what's happening, he decided that's it, he'd had enough, and he was going to write the book. So, I'll just read the back cover. Economic hitmen are highly paid professionals who cheat countries around the globe out of trillions of dollars. Their tools include fraudulent financial reports, rigged elections, payoff, extortion, sex and murder. They play a game as old as empire itself, but one that has taken on terrifying dimensions during this time of globalization. And then it just says, John Perkins should know he was an economic hitman for an international consulting firm that worked to convince poorer countries to accept enormous development loans and to make sure that such projects were contracted to US companies. Once these countries were saddled with huge debts, bankers, IMF, formula, The American government would request their pound of flesh in favours, including access to natural resources, military cooperation and political support. Perkins has ripped, comes from the best documentary, the Best Democracy Money Can Buy author. Perkins has ripped open the belly of the financial buccaneers. Here are the real-life details of international corporate skullduggery spun into a tale rivaling the darkest espionage thriller. So, John Perkins exposes it all in the book, and how Kissinger finally went to negotiate the corporate oil deals with the Saudis in the early 70s after the Arab embargo, and then slightly before that. So, this isn't anything new, yeah? And it's the bankers that are doing it. Okay, people have tried over the centuries, and everybody's brought this to our attention. To read just a few quotes here, I put here on my little leaflet in 2006. Here are what some of the wise men of the past tried to warn us of. They established here in our free country the worm-eaten monarchical institution of the King's Bank to control us from the top down and shackle us from the cradle to the grave. That was a guy called Louis McFadden. Theodore Roosevelt, President, New York Times, 27th of March 1922. These international bankers and Rockefeller Standard Oil interests control the majority of newspapers and columns of these papers to club into submission or drive out of public office officials who refuse to do their bidding of the powerful corrupt cliques which compose the invisible government. John Hylam, Mayor of New York, again, March 1922. The warning of Theodore Roosevelt has much timeliness today, for the real menace of our republic is the invisible government, which, like a giant octopus, sprawls its slimy length over our city, state and nation. It seizes in its long and powerful tentacles our executive officers, our legislative bodies, our schools, our courts, our newspapers and every agency created for public protection. That was in 1922. You know, they've had a good run at it since. Senator Barry Goldwater, presidential nominee in '64. Most Americans have no real understanding of the operation of the international money lenders. The accounts of the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England have never been audited. They operate outside the control of Congress and government and manipulate the credit of the respective countries that they control. And then finally, just so as I don't over-egg the pudding here, James Madison, key draftsman of the American Constitution, 4th President of the United States. History records that the money changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit and violent means possible to maintain their control over governments by controlling money and its issuance. So that's really no news to anybody in the room, but it's just trying to highlight the fact that people like John Perkins come along and make these statements and we just roll on. And all of these people have made these statements in the past and we roll on. So it may just be time now for it to be different, and it could well be, because as far as I can see, what we've put into progress here at the moment hasn't been done before. I do firmly believe, as I said maybe about 40 minutes ago now, that the key problem that is facing the global central banks now, and is being written by the economists that are there to advise central banks, that they've been able to keep this, this wheel turning with all sorts of trickery and deceit, but eventually, like everything, it comes up to a mathematical unmovable wall. So the mathematical progression ends up with the figures now becoming so intense or so incredibly exponential that they can't actually start paying off the debt. So, and don't forget, all this money now that's flooded the planet has been loaned to these banks at zero interest, or 0.2. Virtually nothing, it's free money. So the only way for it to go on the model is, it can't go further, probably the interest rates might have to move. And when they do, it will be because they decide. So that will be the equivalent of lighting the blue touch paper. And if you want to have further guidance on it, you have to look at things like supposedly key figures in the economics world. And one of them is what's called the US Treasury 10-year bond. And that was just a few years at about 4%, because people go into bonds because they think the United States government will never default on its debt, and so it's good for pensions and long-term investment. That yield now is down, I think, below 2. And the reason the yield's going down is because nobody wants them anymore. And one of the big points recently is that the Chinese and the Russians have put a new clearing system together. I think it's called Dagon. Yeah? So now they're clearing internationally in direct competition to the petrodollar, and they're clearing in renminbi, yuan, and ruble. So there's definitely something going on, and it's what control ultimately these two major sides have. It's the Zionists in the banking community against sort of like the Fourth Reich. So the Fourth Reich is the German machinery that didn't lose the Second World War. It just migrated over to America, and courtesy of the Saxe-Coburg, Mountbatten, Saxe-Coburg, Gotha, Windsors, with platoons of SS being housed up and rehabilitated in Scotland, you had a very, very friendly rebuild after. And so the Zionist element take care of all the banks and financial. That's from insurance, credit, and banking. And then the Fourth Reich take care of everything else. That's your power distribution, your roads, your logistics, building, construction, everything. So there's these two houses that are jockeying now for probably who is going to be in control of the money supply, ultimately. And what invariably they've done when credit levels have always got very, very high or unsustainable, they always like the blue touch paper, and they create a war that you don't know where it came from or what the real reason was, and by the time you've come out of the dust and the ashes, nobody really knows anything, So what they're trying to do is spiritually, morally, societally, psychologically break you. And that's the bigger agenda. So they're not particularly, kind or nice people. So what we're trying to do is to say, right, if that's it, and we think that the game is exposed, or as they say, the game is up, the game is on its foot and running, we can see them for what it is, but what do we do about it now? So the only people that can do things about it are you and me and other groups coming together for this. So
I heard yesterday that a guy from the army is retiring, and his last job is to call back in 12,000 troops, soldiers, because they're going into Syria.
Are they? Yeah. Well, if anyone's gone into my Facebook post recently, I put a post up addressed to a chap called Tim Collins. It's called I think it's called New Century. He wrote.
Sorry, could you repeat the question she asked?
Oh yeah, she just said that she'd heard that someone in the military, they were just recalling 12,000 people from...
That had left the army.
Oh, that had left the army. They were recalling them on some prospect of going back maybe to war against Syria or invading Syria. That was the statement.
Well,
so
why would you need that when you've got ISIS doing the job for you?
Yeah, exactly. ISIS that came from nowhere with a set of bolt cutters and a video camera, and now rule half the world. And they all did
by the states.
Yeah, and they did all that without the Americans knowing anything about it. So it's just quite incredible. But didn't we have what's his name, Osama bin Laden, controlling Al Qaeda out of a cave in Spain with a mobile phone when you can't even get a signal on the M25? It's just like, it beggars like, what do they think? But this is what they're genuinely doing. They're lapping up their sleeve, and they can't believe how they get away with it.
Well, they get away with it because they've got all the means of media, everything.
Yeah. So This is the thing, and for the vast majority of people out there, I don't have to say anything to you. You know what it's like when you try and mention this to people. They think you're.
Yeah,
They
but
think you're a bit.
Peter, I admire everything you're saying, right? I admire everything you're saying, right? But the problem is basically, and I expect Salon and everything have much more experience than this. They go for bankruptcy over if you're getting someone £1,000 worth of debt, the first thing the state goes for is bankruptcy, and they do it basically because they can take them out one at a time.
Yeah.
And unless the people basically support people like Tom, it's always going to happen that way.
Yeah.
I don't care how well qualified you are, you're going to basically hit the bumpers. And most people basically aren't prepared to sacrifice
Yeah.
until it gets to the stage where basically they get so desperate and they haven't educated themselves, and consequently they aren't prepared for what's coming.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree. It's a very good point. This is why you have to, I would suggest, get into a situation where you do have numbers.
Correct.
Without the numbers, you're going to get beaten down every time. So, and the numbers don't necessarily have to be with you. Look at the police, right? How many police in the United Kingdom? Probably about 60,000, 80,000 full-time. Then they've got the community support and all the other bullshit, right? But
AEG fascists.
yeah, but what they base it on is what's called like the bee or wasp principle. So one policeman, yeah, gets into trouble, uses the radio, 5 turn up. If it can't be contained, the radio brings another 20 in. Yeah, but there's a limit to how many they can bring in, but they can deal with it. How do you?
But they can't deal with the riots in London when it all kicked off.
No.
Right? They couldn't deal with that.
That's because they let it happen.
Yeah. So what we've got to realise is that whether they can do anything about it or not, when you come into a machine, like coming into the police or the army, you know, you're following rules, and within reason you've got to do as you say, or as told, sorry, otherwise you have to leave. So the idea is really to get this aspect into a situation, or the collective that we are, into a realistic movement that's got enough tools to be able to conduct itself. So one of them, it will be an identifiable principle under which not too many people should have any type of objection, and the question then would be to anyone who opposed it, well, if you don't agree to this liberating, overriding, universal principle, then that's it. It's one question with just one response, a yes or a no. We haven't got to get into the political, well, it all depends what you mean by that, or what I'd say, and I want to make it absolutely clear, you know, like the Miliband sort of taught by Tony Blair, you know, it's just, no, what I've got to say here is, no, just answer the question. No, they never do, because they've got nothing to say. So the degree of trickery continues for Parliament after Parliament, and we're in it again, you know. And in the meantime, you know, this draconian Orwellian state just crunches us even more and closes us down even more. And so it is probably now not too late, but it's something that should have been done years ago, and it just makes it more difficult to do it now. But I believe it can be done, and I believe that it isn't a fait accompli. There are a lot of people in the background that want this to work, believe me. Not everybody agrees with their principle. And what I know is that the central banks are in dire straits and calamity as to what's going to happen when it goes, because they know when people lose it all, you know, they'll lose it. You'll end up with, you know, maybe things that you know, aren't too polite for them. So that's really where I think we've got to take this. A point here, just on the illegality of this, of the whole system of the banking, you know, movement that surrounds you. There's a book here. It was a book written in, I think it was 2003, I think, around, by a guy called Philip Sands, QC. It's called Lawless World. And Philip Sands runs a chambers in London called the Matrix Chambers. And at the matrix chambers is where, yeah, quite,
I've actually tried emailing him actually.
yeah, did you get any reply?
I'm waiting for a reply.
Okay, when I asked him if he would help me prosecute some of the statements that he made in his book, the final conversation was, I can't have that sort of a conversation, I'd appreciate if you don't phone me anymore.
He's actually involved in the new Bill of Rights, isn't he?
Yeah, so Philip Sands, QC, he had Tony Blair and Sherry Blair in his chambers because Blair studied as a lawyer, Sherry Blair was a barrister, yeah? So they were very au fait or very knowledgeable of what they were doing in their political careers. And one of the points to sort of reiterate here is the fact of being involved with the illegality of war. And what it states in some of the conventions, the international conventions, is, one point here, any person who threatens torture or who is complicit or participates in it is also to be treated as a criminal. Complicity can include a commanding officer, a political official, a legal advisor, or anyone who gives the green light. In fact, it can include anyone. So there is no hiding behind any of the structures that says, well, we don't know and we weren't involved in it. There are some, quite astounding figures of, the number of people that have been rendered, into these places like Guantanamo, which everybody did anybody not know where it is? Guantanamo. Cuba. Quite a strange place for it to be. A place that's been since 1963 in a state of embargo against the United States, tucked away on an island in Cuba, run by the arch enemy of the United States, so-called Fidel Castro.
Great man.
Yeah, very strange. I would probably have made some protest or put like a 3-line complaint in the Washington Times or the New York Post saying they should get off our land, but not a squeak. So you've got to ask yourself, they've trampled all of these regulations and all of these international conventions, and it brings it back to the point that with the Clintons and with the Bushes in the United States on the East Coast there, if Hillary gets in again, we'll have had 2 families ruling the United States overtly for, the last 25 years more. You had Bush Sr., former head of the CIA, then Vice President, then 2 terms as President, his son, 2 terms as President.
Yeah.
Then you had Clinton in for 2 terms, and if she gets in now, that'll be another part of them. So you can just see that the odds from Ladbrokes on that type of thing happening normally would be quite fantastic. So I'll just want to now cover, just to see how we're doing for time, and then
Debt-Free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
Cuba, there was a video this week about a lady called Lorraine Murray, and she's doing some research into the Iranians and sorry, I'm a speech problem. It's about the link between Cuba and the Iranians and the old tribes. What she's saying is that they're not as we think at all.
yeah, the lady just said that there's a link between the Cubans and the Iranians, and who was the lady that?
Lorraine Murray.
Lorraine Murray, and yeah, I would quite think not everything is as it.
The video was with Alfred Lamont Weber.
Alfred Lamont Weber. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what I'd quickly like to cover now, we'll do some questions and answers in a moment, and for any people from the security services that might have slipped in, or any visitors representing Quatloose, yeah, who are coming along to disrupt. Also, what we will have to do eventually, as the groups become bigger, we will have to provide our own security. And that's only in case, though I don't think, there are disruptive elements. Because what you can never do is rely on external agencies to protect the integrity of a group. I don't think it'll need that, but I just like to reiterate the fact for everybody, we've got to get the numbers up each time we meet. Next time, I don't think this room will be big enough. Yeah. And for the next venues, the idea is for me, or we move around and we grow the groups, and then we can start bringing them together and exploding the numbers.
Did it have a lot of time this time, though?
Pardon?
Did it have a lot of time?
No, we didn't have much time, and people have travelled, and so the only thing I can put it into perspective. Yeah, so at the moment there's about 75 people a day coming on board. Okay.
Brilliant.
When the website was taken down, there were around. That's just joining, by the way. There's obviously no way we can fund it or take money from the people all over the world that are wanting to join it now at the moment. When it closed down on the 6th or 7th, it was around about 25 people. It was just gone from it was creeping up. So it hadn't been like that for long, but the numbers were consistently going. So as of the moment, we've got around about 550 on the new website, and it's only really been put up this week. So that's to show there is an appetite for it, and it's coming in from everywhere. It's coming in, if we look at the traffic coming in on the website, it's coming in from all around the world. The main problem is at the moment we can't grow it because we have no platform to receive the funding. But there are things in place that will alleviate that, and probably I might cover that after. But what I've done today is I brought some envelopes along. Okay, so we're going to pass those out, and anybody that's already joined, yeah, who wants to now make their second monthly contribution, can just put the cash in the envelope. It's a bit like being in church, I'm afraid. If people want to join for the first time, then just put the cash in the envelope. But make sure on the envelope that you just put your name printed. Everybody knows how to put their account number. Account number is just your date of birth, date, MMYY, and then just your first two initials. So what that will enable you to do then is when you go on to wearebank.com, you'll be able to put those details in, and then that will show that you have actually joined. Yeah.
There is a possibility there, Peter, of people, of somebody having the same account number.
There is. Very good point. But we haven't had it yet. We will get it eventually. But for now, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 digits. Yeah, and we can and will adjust it. So we'll go then to maybe putting an extra digit in, like when they change the phone numbers. So why I'm actually we're looking at this is that we think the funding is going to have to go back to how it used to be in the old days when unions used to meet, because what we've tried to look is any other possibility of relying on their system, and at the moment we can't do. We've had a company called Patronics in Canada offer. There's another company in Iceland which I thought might be a good way, but it all relies ultimately on it hitting someone's bank account. And who's going to volunteer for that?
Go on, then I will.
Yeah. So what we're looking to do is make a sort of a present to you all in the form of the following. We've worked out, and this is just had to be worked out quickly because it took us all by surprise when it took off. Because for those who don't know, this has been on the back burner since 2012, and you know what happened this time is I met with Mark a week before we even did the launch, And I said, well, I don't know how it's going to go, and hopefully, but you know, let's see, and we're committed to it now. The first 100 checkbooks had gone before we'd even got to the launch date. And so then we were always behind. We never had the chance to catch up. However, we just about caught up at the time of the 6th, because on the day of the 6th, before the election, the last sort of 60 or 50-fold books or whatever went off, and we had a deficit to that point of about 15 people who'd paid and not received their books. Now we couldn't refund them, and we couldn't do anything because PayPal won't allow me to refund, and all it keeps saying now is payment skipped. To put it in perspective, the 17 days from the time of it closing, about the 6th, it's turned away just under £10,000 in revenue.
Wow.
So now it would have been more and more people joining. And I mentioned this to be transparent about it. Yeah? And even before, everybody can, the quack loose people who say I'm living on an island somewhere with a Maserati or what, you can do the figures, 200 people join, 10 quid a time. 80% of them may be around, or you could go to 100%, doesn't matter, of taking a checkbook, posting. If it's in the UK, it's just about £2.50 for the post. The books are costing around about, probably not just under £6. So there's the books, the postage, the envelopes. That's probably about it, really. So yeah, I don't even count that. There's the getting to and from. There's me standing. It takes me about 1 minute to put one package through, even though I've actually done
if you compare what you're doing compared to the bankers still taking their bonuses, mate, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There ain't no equation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
None at all.
No. So what? All I can say, so that you can go forward with good news for the time, for now, is. We've all been waiting for something for so long, and we've all been yearning for it, and those who've got a spiritual perspective or believe in a God have prayed for it, and how do I get out of it? Well, I've been on this path a long time. This isn't just like, I had too many Stellas one night, and I thought, hey, this all sounds good. I've been doing it a long time, and I've been deliberately trying to face and back them down for a long time. And to me now, how long are we into it? Still nobody's come along and asked me what I'm doing.
And you're still alive?
Yeah. Well, so the courtesy of actually coming would have been one thing, but the other part of it would have been, it will be on my terms, because I've got some quite, I've just got, protection. Yeah, so I like to mention that, because without it, it wouldn't give me the courage to do what I'm doing. And so that protection isn't necessarily physical, it's on let's say, more energetic or spiritual level. Because I still maintain you have to, and if you don't understand it or believe it, unless you can encapsulate this extraterrestrial perspective or this off-planet energy, then you'll never figure anything out in the arena. You'll spend your next 40 years bumping along, wondering, well, what were the angels referred to in the Bible? Were they actually angels, or what were they? And what's all this about the Star Trek things so there's a very interested set of beings, and this is all part of, even we end up with disclosure eventually. We probably won't get it from the people who are sitting comfortably on the top of the pyramid, because they'll have their heads ripped off, because first thing that people are going to say is, well, have you been keeping it secret for the last 60 years or longer? So this is the point, that we take it forward. We've got a beautiful instrument that hasn't got any holes in it. People might kick it a bit and knock it. The weakest part of it is the data capture and the way that we're processing it in the early days. But the financial instruments are strong, you have a genuine connectivity between you as a consensual individual and the third party that you have agreed to place your pledge with, that then creates the triangle for the payment. So what was happening before is, like if you do something on the UCC, or you do acceptance for value, or you try and give a promissory note to the judge, you know, they're doing this whole, oh, you know, don't touch me with that, or, you know, we don't accept that. And you're on your own, and how are you going to argue it? You know, you're there, and you're in a difficult situation. But when some other organisation comes along and says, well, this is it, this is, you know, it's a proper bank. This is what we do. We've got a paper trail, and we've got the accounts all covered, and we are, you know, we have not only the promissory notes that each individual is pledging, but we've got these other instruments from the 1934 Treasury certificates. Plus, if we achieve the power that we're going to, and we actually do already have in future time, then it will be our right to impose, which I've already done, this 1% financial commercial UK transaction tax, which is called FOCT. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. Fuck 'em. Yeah. And it only runs at 1%, and with the 1%, that will bring in, at current levels, for those who haven't heard it before, and for those who have, I'd like to reiterate, about 1.84 trillion a year. So that means every single tax in the UK, everyone could be dispensed with, and you would have 3 times the revenue in place than you already have now.
Paid by the bankers who basically put us there in the first place.
Paid by the bankers and paid by the insurance companies and big corporate owned by the banks. There's only about 153 corporations in the world that actually interconnect with all the others, and therefore it's all part of a big web. So it is doable, and so we could make, and even where we will go with this, when we've grown it, you have a problem, how much you need for the NHS?
Yeah.
We'll write the cheque. Yeah, so what's the problem? That's where it's come from. So we've got to get away from this Miliband, Cameron, Farage mindset, confused by Paxman's questions. I mean, how exactly would you raise this extra revenue? Chaps, LCH, London Clearing, BarX, Barclays, on and on it goes. Over-the-counter market, the Forex market, the bullion market, London Stock Exchange. None of it's taxed. Nobody knows where it is. Nobody can keep a track of it, and they never bothered because it's all sort of off book. And just on that point of these acronyms, that one is FOCT, Financial Commercial UK Transaction Tax. And then one of the things that the bankers are asking for is what clearing system are we using? And they keep saying you have to use SWIFT. Yeah, has everybody heard of SWIFT? So SWIFT was set up in 1973. Yeah, it is, or was set up in Belgium. Yeah, 1973. It's collectively run by then 239 banks. And in 1973 there wasn't the internet, it's hardly calculators, and all it was is a secure means of delivering military type traffic, and it's a telecoms company. So it's nothing more than the Vodafone or Orange or 3 of the banks. Okay? So when they say, do you use SWIFT? Well, no we don't, but I've introduced 2 others for them. Okay? The first one is called, the acronym is called SPIT. Okay? So that stands for Secure Protocol Investment Transfer. Okay? Secure Protocol Investment Transfer. And if they don't want it through that means, then opposite to Swift, we have swallow. And that's what they're going to have to do with it. Spit or swallow. Okay? And swallow stands for securitized waygate allow. Yeah? So it's just like securitized waygate. And a waygate is something called a tail race. And a tail race is that part of a mill where all the rubbish and the water and the finings and all the shite and toxic waste runs down. So that's really what we're doing. We say, right, this is our clearing system, and if they want it clearing, it gets cleared over a secure link on the internet, and apart from the NSA and the CIA or GCHQ interrupting the traffic between where you send, or we send, and being received in their bank, it's quite a difficult operation to intercept that traffic, by your average person. And the reason SWIFT was set up is simply so that the banks could hide their criminal money laundering, terrorist funding, warmongering efforts from everybody else, and to keep it all sort of secret and nice and dirtily hidden under the carpet. So I can't reiterate enough just how vile these organisms are, and they're parasites. It's a parasitic, cancerous thing that's on the body human or society, and it's got to be got rid of. I mean, it's as simple as that. So we've got to find out, if we can't take it out of us, then we've got to move away from it. And that's the solution. We don't need a difficult time with them. We don't need to go up and smash their windows. And they should be thankful. They should be going down on their knees.
You're going to bail them out, really, like that.
Yeah. But everybody wins. And if anybody can point out for me who loses in this, then I've missed something.
Payday lenders.
Yeah. Well, payday lenders. Okay. But, yeah, good. Let them lose. We welcome payday lenders losing.
Yeah.
But apart from that, the banks, they can start packing up and moving away, and we'll let them keep maybe some of their houses or their ill-found gains. But they come and clear with us. We make it all go away. Because at the moment, the market's maxed out, the cards are maxed out, there's no money to come from anywhere else apart from this quantitative easing rubbish, which is just printing counterfeit money, more and more of it. It failed in America, it will fail again in Europe, and the end result is going to be probably more of what we've historically had. So they should be thanking us, and they think this is what in effect has started to happen. In many cases, they're clearing in the background because your signature is the only thing of value in the world, unless you're handing something like a good or a service over to someone. There isn't anything other than your promise. And if any of them tell you it's a worthless piece of paper, then a mortgage agreement is, and a loan agreement is, and a double glazing agreement, or anything such as that. So with that, we'll have a pause now, and then we can do questions after. But there's one more question before we do.
Well, I could save it to questions after, Peter.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
I just wanted to say, as of this morning, a kind of current tactic in the game that they're playing back to us right at the moment is my first cheque was confiscated by Barclays. They refused to give it me back and just claimed that the account was fraudulent.
Confiscate, to take without lawful excuse.
Right, okay. But that was the end of the matter. They refused to talk to me. However, I wonder if there's a way around that, because my so-called creditor did forward me a letter when I wrote to them to say how much do I owe, and gave me the full amount. They came back with a letter that did include the account number and the sort code of the account that they wanted credited. And I just wonder if we can actually bypass the checks altogether, and whether you can directly, if I supplied you that account number, that sort code, clear it directly, without them having...
It may be possible, but what's going to be happening with when the dust settles and the website is put together, we're going to try and introduce a new type of system which makes it easier for everybody, that in your members area you actually notify us first who you want to pay. Okay, so you'll fill it in. What we will do then is we will make sure that obviously that gets entered onto the ledger and that it's within the agreed limit, so everybody stays happy, but also we'll know who it's going to, obviously, and then what to expect. From that point, what will happen is we're probably going away from the 50 book model, because as I can see now, if you've got a book of 50 cheques, the people I've spoken to have probably got 45 still in there, or at least 40, so there's a lot of redundancy that we produced for the back end. And if we'd have done it on 25 book numbers, we'd have had double the amount. Therefore, even you people today would have been in possession of. So the idea will be that we're going to drop the numbers down. We're going to tie that then into the monthly membership, and then we're going to push those to you monthly. So we'll send them out to you on a monthly basis in smaller batches, instead of loading everybody down with books, because one of the big problems is not the actual printing but the finishing. It's quite an arduous task to finish them and get them all.
Sorry, he asked the question, if we don't accept the check, what do we do?
I'll cover that after the break.
Now when you say short numbers, if you sort of send in say 5 checks a month.
Well, if you wait,
Well, ask it after the break, yeah? Okay. Brilliant.
Debt-Free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
Okay, welcome back after the break. Before we get on to the question session, I'd just like to mention to those people who don't know, we're just handing these envelopes around, like being in church. I do apologise for that. Is anybody in need of an envelope that anybody wants to? If anyone hasn't got an envelope but wants one, this is for putting your monthly contribution in, and for those people who are for joining Removement, and for those people then who want to avail themselves of Weir Bank cheque services, they'll need to put their donation in for that, or their payment for that. Everybody? Well, I'll address that right now. So on the envelope, what I'd like you to do is, first of all, make sure you've got your account number. So your account number will be day, month, year, and then now your first initial and your surname initial. So mine would be 18th of October 1957 on my birth certificate, or my national insurance certificate. It's A. Smith, so it would be 1810 AS. Clear?
You know, date of birth 10/8/58.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing then is to make sure you print your name clearly. Yeah? So don't do pretend you're at school doing an English writing test. It needs to be legible. And then, if you would put on what you've actually put in, and then why. So if you put £10 in because you're a first-time joiner, then just put £10 monthly membership Removement. Or if you've already joined and you're making a second month payment, then you can put in £10 second month's payment. And if you're wanting to avail yourself of the chequebook, then it will be £10 first monthly membership or second monthly membership, plus the 25 for the chequebook. Okay?
Sorry if I'm interrupting you. If you've got a double name, do you put your middle name as well? Or you put just the
No, just your first. If you've got three names like mine's APM Smith, just put A and S. Just two initials. Your first initial, as it is on your birth certificate or your national insurance certificate. If anybody wants an envelope.
If we made payment on the 4th of May, can we assume that you haven't got?
Okay, that's a very good question. A lady's just asked.
Can we concentrate on the speaker, please?
The lady's just asked if she made a payment on the 4th of May, does she need to pay again? As of the 6th, that's when the PayPal account was frozen. Just so that people know, there's about, I think there's just under 2,000 in there, which we can't avail ourselves, and I've tried, to make immediate refunds. Because what they did is, people who were cancelling and wanted a refund, they were escalating that to a dispute without giving us the opportunity to make a refund. So for the first part of the 7th, there was a few that we could clear, but by the morning of the 8th, we couldn't do anything either way. All we could do is gaze at it as more came in, and it says payment skipped, payment skipped, payment skipped. So the long and short of it is, for those people who've made a PayPal payment up to, I don't know, probably around anything from, it could be from the 3rd to the 6th, it's in there, and it's frozen, and so I'm assuming that what you should do is claim it back from them, because we can't get anything, they won't speak to me or do anything about it. So somebody had a question there.
Just on a technicality, really. If they're worried about the date or whatever, have you got the data for their account, or we'll just put the date when they made the last payment on the envelope here?
Yeah, if they know it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
If they know it, because sometimes it doesn't show up immediately on the PayPal, or it might say you think it was the 6th when you sent it, but it doesn't sometimes come through till the 7th. So, right. So I think that's. So I just want to reiterate the idea here, just so that everybody's quite clear, and maybe the people who are watching the video are quite clear why it's got to be this way for now. We are looking to put together, we've estimated, to get Weir Bank into a almost unassailable position with a place that we can work out of, with our own servers and our own people behind this. Anything probably, we think, around about maybe £350,000. Okay, which isn't a lot of money. Now, the proposition to everyone out there, and also to the people here as a test, it's the first time I've broached the idea, because we were only thinking it up the other day, is that if we actually saw the figures of what had happened to this so-called business startup in the normal world, we see that in a 30-day period, according to the PayPal log, there were 465 payment transactions that had come in the first 30 days. We saw that the numbers initially joining were 10 or 12 a day, which then moved to about 20, and then it started to creep up to around about 25 in the last couple of days when it was closed down. Then moving to the fact that with the site as it is now, as of yesterday and the day before, it's averaging around about 75 people a day wishing to join. Now, with that type of business model, in the normal world, if we were in the normal world, we'd probably be thinking of expanding. Yeah? We'd say, right, looks like it's a successful business. We have a business plan, and we'd go to the
bank.
We'd go to the bank and put the proposition to them, and they'd look at it, and I'm sure what they'd say is, well, this is quite remarkable. You know, it's an e-commerce business. There's all this action, and people want to join with you. So, yeah, how much do you want? Okay, so we can't do that. So,
I'll see you later.
Okay. So the idea is that we need to therefore go to where any company would go, and that is to probably the people who want to buy shares in it.
Yeah.
The shareholders. So we're not, though, asking you to dip into your pockets and, you know, send £1,000 for 50 shares, or, you know, purchase them through a broker or anything like this. The idea is really that that's what we want to facilitate now. So as everybody should be aware, when your contributions are coming in, what we are doing is we're crediting the account, your account, with what you've put in sterling, and crediting that into the account in re. Okay? Plus giving you the facility on your promissory note in the normal world to use that to pay down. So we've almost got the best of both worlds. What many people aren't aware of, that within the promissory note you've got two values side by side. There's 150,000 sterling and there's 148,000 re, which nobody sort of knows what it is, and you know, it's a monopoly game or it's a quack loose idea. Yeah? But the integrity within that system is that it's a double mechanism to be paid down. Because as you will be aware, in the little flyer and in the master document, it says that when you purchase anything at a retail outlet, you have the choice of either paying in sterling or re. Okay? So everybody quite aware of that. And that the retailer or the service provider has the choice of either accepting the payment in sterling, and by that I mean you go in and you get your tenner out and you pay for it in a tenner, or he can accept the unit of currency called re, wherein you pay 5. So in effect, your 148,000 re is equivalent to 296,000 sterling.
Oh.
Okay, you with me? So
that's two. Then that's two.
Yeah, so that's at a 2 to 1. So if you want to pay down the promissory note in re at the 150, you can pay it down twice as fast. So we've given you the best of both worlds. So everybody quite clear? Okay, not quite clear with that. Okay. I won't labour the point too much, but it gives you a mechanism of, for example, you're looking to pay down the 150,000, yeah? And you're doing a 9 till 5 job, and you're getting paid 20 grand a year. And you're thinking, right, we've said that we are prepared to allow you to credit that, because we think as an employment provider or as a customer, you actually should be being paid much more than you're worth. And you're working through an agency. So if you're working for an agency, the agency allows you to pay, they pay you £7 an hour, and they charge the employer 14. Yeah? You know, some of these NHS nurses are being given £1,000 to do a weekend shift because there's such a shortage, but because they're employed through agency work. So the concept or the idea isn't new, it's the fact that within the workplace you should be getting more. And as we are the ultimate arbiter of what you should be getting, it's us that decide what you should be paid, because you're presenting your services through us, to us. So if we are the people that have taken the promissory note, then we can help you set the terms in a more favourable way as to how it's paid down. Is that okay? That's fairly clear. Up to that.
Sorry, Peter. I mean, I was under the impression that we were paying down the promissory note in units of time.
Yes. You're paying units of time is the currency of the re-unit. Okay. So that's 148,000 that could be paid down by you doing whatever time work you wanted. So you've got to be a bit schizophrenic and have a two-coin approach here. So you could be paying that down because there could be someone who isn't working and can't pay the 150 down over time in any way. But what they can do is they can say, right, well, I'm a housewife, or I'm a social worker, I do community work, I do this, I do that, I do all these other things, or I'm a housewife. Does the cost of being a housewife have a price? Or is it something that should have no monetary value attached to it? Yeah, okay, so that's on that side of the equation, and on the 150 it has to be calculated in sterling, because if we didn't have sterling in, we'd be fighting a losing battle from day one. The banks would be coming along and saying it's a monopoly, monopoly type currency, it doesn't exist, and it's not a complementary currency like with the Via Bank in Switzerland, or the Chiemgauer in Germany, because those are all directly exchangeable back into currency. And what we're trying to create here, not trying, what we're setting up here is when the economic collapse comes, or when they decide to pull the carpet from under everyone's feet, your world doesn't come crashing to an end because you can't get to an ATM and get sterling out. You have an alternative unit of currency which you're just becoming familiar with to protect you to do whatever. And that's the whole idea behind the Via Bank model in Switzerland, which, if you're not aware of, was set up in 1929 or early 32. So that's the point. So don't worry so much how it gets done. It's the fact that it is doable. There are mechanisms in place that we will show you how to legitimately, because this is what it's got to be. Because we can't have some judge or fancy barrister or someone who was involved in setting up the Consumer Credit Act coming along and saying, oh, you know, that's mathematically unsound and can't work. I've got to be able to say, well, it can, and this is how it's been set up. So if your mind can comprehend it or think it through, then that's the nature of what we're trying to do here, is bring everybody up as fast as they can. And if we are saying that most products, if we divide them by, I'd even go up to 8, divide it by 8, you get a realistic appreciation of what it should be worth. That you should be able to pick that up with a division of 8, and it still probably leaves a little bit in there. And so what we've ultimately got to address the point is that, like I've said before, if you're broke at the end of the month, and then you have all this money at the beginning of the month, and then at the next end of the month you're broke, and then you've even got more credit debt because you had to slowly and insidiously, you know, like a rat chewing at something, you know, get a little bit more off the banks. What's the point, you know? You might as well be broke all month. So ultimately, you're very...
It would clarify me if you would tell me, how do I advise where banks? Let's say I do 37.5 hours per week in my job.
Yeah.
What do I advise where bank I'm doing? Do I advise you that's my hours, or do I advise you that I earned 250 quid doing that?
Very good question. The gentleman has just said, how does he advise where bank on typically how he's paying down the promissory note? Okay. Now, don't forget, some people may provide a promissory note and not actually take a checkbook or sign a check. So what would be happening there is, on the members section, you will be able to go in and you will be able to see your promissory note scanned and in place. Equally, there's what's called TXI, TXO. Transactions in, transactions out, and an accounting system which is all downloadable in Excel. So very simple. You click on it, it'll go export, it'll say open or save, and you can see it in an Excel spreadsheet. So you will be quite current on that. In the facility where you people have to do all the work, because we're going to push it out to you, you have to fill in what you've done. So if you're working for DHL as a truck driver, doing 50 hours a week, yeah, it can be proven. We don't need to prove it now. It's a bit like medical self-insurance. They allow you to insure with them, and it's only then when you claim that they look at your doctor's records and want to know, was there a pre-existing condition? Okay, so we're not bothered about that, you know, because we're working for you. You know, we're not working for the old system that wants to make sure that, you know, and we trust you, and out of trust, I think, will come trust, because don't forget, this system has been, before it was conceived, before that sexual energetic act conceived it, it was thought through with good intention, because before the idea came, I've been working on other models and working with different groups who were looking to introduce an alternative. So even before it came along, it was good. So the conception was good, the gestation period was good, the birth was good. There's no losers in it, and it truly is designed to be as good, if not better, than it looks. And I reiterate, no one loses out on it. There's no tricks, there's no, anti-personnel mind clicks that you go, oh God, I've just trod on it and what do I do now? There's no trickery, there's no promissory notes being sold to the Chinese or the Russians, or being securitized and bundled up and patched off to wherever. So it's all clear, it's all above board, it's going to be transparent, and the transparency will come because it'll be you people going on to your own area, and if you choose to want to share any of this with anyone else, then you can, but there'll be your area where you can see what you've put in. So if you're working in a 50-hour-a-week job as a truck driver for DHL, what you'll do is you'll apportion that salary as it's earned to paying down the promissory note. At the same time, for any additional work you're doing, in whatever capacity you can think of defining work, maybe not sleeping, but those hours will be contributed at 12 re an hour, equivalent to 24 quid's worth of sterling spending in a retail environment per hour, as you will credit. Now, you just keep a record of that, and ultimately it comes down to trust, but if somebody's trying to say that they've been working 26 hours a day, it might flag something up, but as long as you keep it maybe around about 18 hours a day, you shouldn't have any, because you've got to work because you're a slave, and you've got to do that. Okay, so the next thing is that this gentleman has just said he doesn't work, he's taking pension and benefit. Well, pension and benefit is actually being grossly underpaid to you by a phenomenal fraction. So not only will we allow you to pay your pension and benefit in, but also you have the ability within reason to come up with some type of intellectual input. No, but I'm sure you can be reasonably creative and put something together that has a value. And to be quite honest, if you're involved in the system, there's a value attributable to it, but we'll come with various other suggestions over time, but leave that for now. Okay, so that's that question.
I'll have another envelope.
Well, there's some here.
Yeah, another envelope.
Cash machine.
Okay. Are we still going? Yeah? Okay, right, there's a chap at the back. Are these hands up for envelopes, or are these hands up for questions?
Debt-Free TV, in association with GetOutOfDebtFree.org.
Hallelujah, praise the Lord.
Can I pay 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah, it's a good point. The gentleman's just asked, can he put more than £10 in the envelope? Yeah, as long as you actually put on the envelope what it's for. Because if you put 3 months in, we could think it's for 10 in a checkbook, when in effect it's just for the membership because you've already got it. So as long as, the main thing is, as long as you are the first people, you're the guinea pigs today. I didn't know how it would go, but the only thing I know is it is for now the only way that it can go, because we're trying to explore all these different avenues, and if we go into the system, it doesn't matter where it is. We've even thought of the idea of some type of randomized allocation of people's accounts, especially for people overseas, whereby in any one particular month there'll be a choice of 5 or 6 different people, and the program would just nominate one for a payment via a PayPal or whoever. But the bottom line is, as soon as they twig it, they will close it down, and so that's that. Okay. It's 25 for the checkbook and 10 for the membership. Okay. Okay.
Is it helpful if we pay by MoneyGram? That's going to the post office, handing over cash, filling in our reference number to your name and whatever you want us to put. You could then, just say 10 minutes, 15 minutes after we've stamped it, emailed you, you can then go to a post office or a Walmart and collect the cash.
Okay. MoneyGram, I don't know. That's how it... What do you need to actually withdraw from the post office? Do you have to have an account?
No, you don't walk in.
Your ID.
Just some ID.
And the number.
Yeah, that might be a way around it. I hadn't...
Someone else asked that in the forum as well.
Yeah?
Just need your details.
Okay, and what will that be? Just the details that I'm going to present at the
other end. We
at the post office.
What your name is for sure.
Okay.
And you would need the MoneyGram number.
Okay. So it's a very okay. It's just drop it down a little bit. Thank you. The only thing there would be that I'd have to provide some ID.
Yes.
The only ID I can provide is probably ID they already have.
Driving license.
Yeah, but what probably could happen, because I've got a suspicion that this might have happened to a few packages, because when I actually had posted these packages off with the checkbooks in, when I actually looked to try and find out where they were, this was 3 days later, 4 days later actually, it still said that they were in the post office. That was the post office that I'd actually put them in at.
Is there any way that from Nottingham maybe could pick up the checkbook rather than your person then?
We've had no problem so much, not generally, I think 98-99% have gone out, but for example, people in Canada, people in America have said, you know, it's 10 days now since you said you posted the book. I then send off a tracked duplicate. That costs, it's £9.46 to send it tracked and signed for. The books cost £6, so we spent nearly £15, £16 on it. And then they get in touch and say, oh, the first one's already turned up, what do you want me to do with the second? So yeah, it might be possible, but for now what I would like to do is to try, we can try and find out how we're dropping out from this. And just to come back on the point that we were making just before the break about the shareholder should have buy-in, that, you know, all we've got to look at it is if it was a start-up company, then what you'd be looking to do is, it's sort of like, have anyone heard of these things called penny shares? Yeah, or on the AIM or unlisted market. And what happens there is, you know, brokers tout a business around saying there's a small business is involved in, I don't know, some type of new radio communication, or, you know, a new patent or a paint delivery system, and then they advise that it's going to be the next big thing and that they should then buy into it. So really this is what we're looking here to offer, is the fact that we can't go to the bank, NatWest or Santander, and say, this is the idea, how much you're going to give us for it, because obviously we're trying to scale their ropes, sorry, their walls with their ropes. So what we'll do is, we'll do like the Bank of England did when it set up in 1688 or 94, 98, no, 94, was it 95? and the Bank of England Act was 1998. And what they did is, William Paterson, one of the founders of it, they wanted something like 1.25 million to set it up, but they could only get something like 225,000. So they borrowed the rest from the bank that they were setting up. You see? So it's a similar type of thing. That there's a bank now, and we don't want to go down this. We don't want to replicate the fractional reserve route at all. That's the whole idea of why the promissory note's there, because it's not backed on nothing. The main two pillars are, one, the promissory note, secondly, the ability to hypothecate these financial instruments out of what's called the global collateral accounts, or called prepaid treasury, which is what the elite guard in the trust, or what the Senate protect, from ancient Roman days. That's the wealth that the people aren't allowed to get anywhere near. And then the other aspect then is, if we want to be cheeky, we go down the Bank of England quarterly 2014 monetary review, which states that, contrary to popular opinion and belief, that there doesn't have to be money in a bank account to create more money, but what they do is that they make a loan. And the moment they make a loan, that creates an immediate deposit in the account of the holder. So they create money. Money comes into being by just them making the loan. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we could follow that route. That's just for when people say, there isn't any money, where's the money coming from? Well, where's all the money coming from QE? Mario Draghi and the ECB putting 2 trillion in over the next year and a half or 2 years. Where did it all come from? The Federal Reserve into the American markets. They're just creating it out of nowhere, and ultimately they'll feed as much debt into the market as you can have before it chokes you. Okay, so
just two things, Peter. With shareholdings, basically, what you've got to be wary of is not now, but unless you get your articles of association correct, you're always going to be targeted for takeover.
Yeah.
And obviously, what the banks would do is obviously, when there's that point. The other point basically is this: the Bronze Grove Group have got. If you look, just basically go on YouTube or whatever, the Bronze Grove Group. They put a very concise way of actually public created money instead of like private created money.
Yeah.
And that's the route basically that we should follow. Private created money, same as QE, but basically put it for the public sector, not for the private sector. Yeah. And we should be in control of the money supply, not the banks. Yeah. The people should be in control of the money supply, period.
Very good. And this is what monetary reform they're trying to, or playing around with in Iceland at the moment. Yeah. The Icelandic president says that they're involved in monetary reform. There's a guy called Frosty Sigurd Johnson who hasn't granted me the honour of a meeting with him, and I've sent 2 emails on Friday to the president and to him as part of I think it's called the Political Reformist Party. And so the Icelandics are threatening to do this right now, to take the money supply or the creation of money from the private commercial back to the Icelandic treasury. I don't know whether they're playing a wolf in sheep's clothing game, because they're talking about it, but they still haven't introduced it yet. But the point raised is very good. What was the very first one you made?
The one is about article shares.
Yeah, okay. Just to let everybody know, we're not going down any of these routes where we are for 1 second entering into their commercial arena and registering it with the Companies House to comply with company appliance, to have what? The accounts accounted so they can take tax off us. No chance. We don't. Once you're in this system, these sabotages of taxation, inflation and interest, these 3 pillars just dissolve away, because they're only created by the banking economists in the background with the big wheel steering it left and right. You want interest up? Oh, amazing, it's going up. You want it to come down. You want taxation up? You want, VAT, let's go to 20% on VAT, why not? Great. They don't need it. It's one of the most vile taxes. You know, you take your dog to the vet and you have to pay 20% to keep it alive, just as a tax. You know, it's quite obscene. So all the taxes, forget them. All the compliance, forget them. The statutory world, just leave it behind. We just gently glide our ship alongside it and we sail it up the channel, and they can do whatever they want. They can piss and moan and throw all their toys out of the cot, but it's us that are creating it, because the money supply should rest with the people, and it's what's been attempted and not followed through for so long. It could be the time to do it. We have to live in hope, because without that we might as well just, you know, we just might as well clock off now and go and hand ourselves in, because and that's the paradox, and this is the sort of, you know, the problem we all face. Part of us says it's not possible, it's just too big a challenge, and they've won.
Yeah.
What can we do?
Anything is possible.
Yeah, so, and then, you know, we've all got the Hollywood Disneyland fairy tale ending where the terrorist always gets caught and, you know, President Bush always deactivates the bomb just 1 second before. I'm not a great advocate of the fairy tale ending. I think we might have to go through some very difficult times in order to sort of reset the tilt on the planet, but I'd rather do it our way than do it their way, because if they are lining up to pull this plug or have everybody thrown off horseback, then there better be something really, you know, quite suitable for you to land on, because if you've got nothing, you are just going to be scrabbling around in the queue. Yeah, give me the chip. I'll do anything to get my, you know, to get my rations from Sainsbury's or delivered by the truck at the end of the, and that's where they want to take it, because the AI, the artificial intelligence program running the system at the moment, is in control. Yeah. That's what we're up against. We're not up against George Osborne and Boris and Cameron, who, if they sat together, if they sat down together for a month, couldn't come up with this.
No.
You know, they can't do it. And get away from the fact that the judges and these people in positions of power are bright or intelligent. They're invariably shit thick. Yeah, you look at them these are the people at school that when you're playing capture the flag or rally anger or whatever you call it, never got picked. Yeah? These are the people who were always like bringing notes in because they couldn't do sport, or teacher's pet. Yeah? So like as Gerald Salenti says, the white shoe boys, yeah? They always got the slick answer and the slick suit. People like Mendelssohn, Peter Mandelson, you remember? Look at the corruption and vileness of him. And then he gets made president of the European Commission. And what he does is instrumental in taking the sugar tariff, so the people in the West Indies and the Caribbean couldn't grow sugar anymore because they wanted an alternative like aspartame. That's a good idea. Plus, he opens the door to massive Chinese imports. I couldn't remember seeing it geography where China was actually on, you know, within the European Common Union. Yet it's the biggest single exporter to the world. So how did it happen? I was watching it in 1981. I was in China in 1981. And I saw the fact that all of these American companies were exporting their factory processes into China. And it was rabidly communist then. I don't know what it is now exactly, but, you know, the same with Russia, you know. When did they all become capitalists? You know, and don't forget they're side by side, and communism as an ideology is a manufactured thing. No one ever choose to have someone like Stalin and Mao or Pol Pot looking after you and putting, you know, more people went to death through those dictators in their own country than actually died in the wars. So it's not always good to have people in charge, because this is what the Camerons and the Blairs and Hillary Rodham Clinton and her phony husband and all that. Yeah, that's what they want. Just total control. Okay, so apart from that, let me do that, young lady at the back.
Can I say that I personally think, if you look back to the beginning of the 19th, 20th century, all the major movements that have come about have come from people gathering and meeting in person, and that our strength, in my opinion, is just this sort of meeting where we can discuss what we want without a trail. We're actually getting out and we're walking the walk. We're actually doing something. We actually have people who are here. And I'm quite happy to bring X months in advance if I have to another time, to cover times I can't manage because I'm a couple of hours away. But I'm, sat nav and all that lot. But I think this is vital, and to give up this as the precept would possibly weaken it enormously.
Yeah.
So I vote on meetings and handing over back.
It's a very good point. The ladies just said that meetings are a very good way to go for it, and this is why it's now come about that it's got to be done this way. Because what they're very conveniently doing is putting us into a peripheral blindness. And it's all very easy. So, in a way, closing down the PayPal thing was the best thing they could have ever done. Thank you. Because in the world of the internet, it's so easy to do the like. It's also very easy to do the follow. Or it's very easy to sit there and go, yeah, I like this idea. I'll send £10. It's gone over PayPal. Never then have to make an effort. So once you're wrapped in that sort of virtual reality, there's never any reason to get off your backside and come out. And as the ladies just said, every single movement of any worth has always come out of meetings.
Yeah. And
I'm not a great follower or advocate of Adolf Hitler, but if you read Mein Kampf, how he set up the party originally in Munich, it started off with a room full of people, 6 or 7. They had to grow it to 8 or 10, and that's what happened. When they did the first rally in Munich with over 1,500 people, they'd reached critical mass. He knew he had it, because from that point it can only go one way. 2005, 5, 10. So this statement.
Can I just add, by the way, Peter, that this also feeds back to you. Physical support.
Yes.
You're not, and I think you need to see that we're here, all but in a protective whatever. We're here physically supporting you.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Peter, do you have support?
Feeding back, in my opinion.
Okay.
Have you got physical support with the everyday, the Monday
okay, no, just so that
one-man band is going to be very stressful.
Yeah, just so that you know, up until a week ago, apart from the gentleman who funded the first run of the checkbooks, it's all been done by me. So there's no team. I've done it all from a little room where I was staying that's about that big, a little like a box room, with a fold-up bed, with someone else's computer and things in it. So,
yay! Finally, a man makes the coffee.
Yeah.
On a point, Peter, we need to support you.
Yeah.
Without your knowledge, a lot of us basically would not know how to go forward.
Yeah. And what I've got to say, and I've mentioned it quite a few times. The genie's out of the bottle now, because this can be done by anyone. The people in Canada, the people in Australia or New Zealand, they're saying, can you help us set up Weirbank there? Well, yes, I can, but set it up. So that is also proof that this isn't a cash-making exercise. This isn't an aggrandizement of Peter or Peter of England or whatever I am these days, because I don't know. It's not setting up a business empire. And I do reiterate, I haven't gone out and bought anything since I started than I had when I began. The only costs over the last week probably have been over £600 spent, because I've been having to stay in travel lodges, and I'm having to travel everywhere by train. because I don't have a car. And apart from these very kind people who've come with me today, who've put me on, you know, last week I was in Gloucester, the week before that I was in a travel lodge in Stoke-on-Trent, and then I was in Warrington with Dave Ward, Baron Ward, and then I was in Gloucester, and then now I'm up north. So it's good, but I don't actually have any material desire.
No, but have you got support there, Peter?
Yeah.
Physical support?
Physical
helping
support.
you with the queuing in the post office, crap like that?
No, I don't, because
you
we
need
don't have a base.
You
And
need
this
help
is
with that,
yeah,
because you'll burn out, you know?
yeah. This is why we need to have a base that we can operate from that's got you know, a centre. So, but we need money to do that.
Yeah.
Peter,
And it isn't.
I'll make a suggestion.
Yeah.
Every month you have a regular meeting to update, because as you're talking just now, people don't know this information.
Yeah.
So if you have a regular meeting,
Yeah.
and then these questions can be put to you and you can answer them,
Yeah.
not just the people here,
Yeah.
but maybe forwarded to them.
Yeah. So the idea is also that we're going to have these meetings in other locations, so people don't have to travel in the south. Don't have to travel so far. So you know, this group can grow, but it can grow with people in the Nottingham area, and then the next one can be done in the Warrington area. There are no shortage of people, I assure you. I mean, and the good thing about the numbers coming on board, it is actually a proof that it's not a fly-by-night operation, and that, you know, there's something that you've missed, you know, that they haven't. And so with the people that are coming on board, it's all very positive, and we've just got to make sure that that momentum goes. And there is these other factors. So the things in the mix are we really, and have we truly become the banker's ultimate get out of jail card? Does everybody benefit? You know, these major philosophical questions that we don't look at, you know, is it right because you haven't got a sort code?
Yeah.
Or, oh, I don't know whether the Allonge, what's all this? And does Section 15 of the UN Convention apply to a check? Or so the main areas are these big footprints, and that's what carries it. The ultimate drag now is taking off, and as long as we keep it going for you know, I don't know, another month, easily the numbers will be vastly superior, and then with that comes more for you. So not only the amounts that you can pay down, but hopefully then it's cutting some slack, because don't forget, ultimately, if the people who say their checks have been returned, these people then are going to get taken into a court, then we've got to argue this, maybe, I'm not sure, in these courts of law. And they've got to dismantle their entire operational system to justify it, unless they're going to go down the route of just dismissing every argument you can possibly throw and say, that doesn't apply, it's this. But they won't have me in the court doing that, because I won't go in under those circumstances. I'll only go in under what's called special appearance, because I don't know whether anyone has heard this in the news, but this Alan Peter Michael Smith, the straw man, he went missing some time back, lost at sea, or presumed dead. And what he did prior to leaving, he left a will, and he appointed Peter of England as the executor. So I'm probating the estate now of that straw man, and so until he actually appears to claim his estate under Section 4 of the Cestui Que Vie Act, or Seti K as some people pronounce it, that means that the executor, to probate a will, always makes special appearance in Chancery Equity, never general. So if they want to argue the toss on that one, officer, yeah, we're waiting for it. So I did a lot of work as well in 2012 with these affidavits that I sent off, you know, distancing myself from the state, saying that all ties were cut now, putting all the alphabet agencies on warning. And so if that counts for something, and there is either an entity or other entities that want us to win, then I assure you I've done everything possible to ensure. And if it doesn't work, then they need their arses kicking when I get up there, because we asked for help, and if they didn't give it, don't blame me. So I can't say better than that.
Peter, we're not blaming you at all.
This young lady's question, she's had her hand.
Okay, right, sorry, yeah.
Debt Free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
Just 1 minute. Okay, this young lady here, yeah?
This is a question about the cheques. So my family have asked me to come down here for this thing. And my brother is wondering, can he have a cheque to buy a house or not? Because these things, they've got arrears, or people who want to have a house but not have to pay rent. So what is the option with buying a house or a...
Okay.
Because it's
right, okay. I'll just have, the lady's just said her brother wants to buy a house. Can she buy a house with the cheque?
Yes, I know.
At the moment, no.
Right.
And that has to be because the entire rationale of setting it up is a people's bank, founded under common law principles, but designed as a backstop or a protection on the public side of the account. And what I mean by that is the public side is everything that the state is trying to throw at you that says you must pay. So all the fines, all the taxes, all the, shall we say, the adhesion contracts that the mortgage companies place upon you, which aren't fair contracts, and no matter what any judge says, if they look at them impartially, they would come on your side. And this is fundamentally the problem you face in a court of law. There is no impartiality. Yeah? The guy is not what he professes. And if you know of Frank Collins' work, rebutting the 12 presumptions of a Roman Curia court, you should look at those. The presumption of public office, the presumption of guilt, the presumption of the judge being on his oath, the presumption of impartiality. They are none of those. You are walking in and you don't even have the right to be there, because prosecutor means prosecutix, means out of the body. So the prosecutor is making the point as the confessor in court on your behalf. And the judge is sitting there acting as the priest, ready to give the sacrament of forgiveness in the confessional. In the old days, it was done with an indulgence paid to the church. Now it's done by fine. And the defense attorney is just sitting there as another aspect within the triangle, but your presence is, you're not there because you're the only person that has to have permission to speak. And if you speak out of time or turn, they'll charge you with contempt, remove you from the court, and put you down in the cells. So that's the idea that what you're up against. Yeah, you have no, and the more you rant on and rave, the more you're actually proving that you're an imbecile or a lunatic within their perverse system, because you don't understand what's going on. Because you're actually saying that you've got the right to speak. And they're going, not in our magic circle. And it's who creates the magic circle that controls the rules within it. And it doesn't matter. But the bottom line is that the waiver of debt is the prime focus of the bank for now, until it gets on its feet, and then we will follow reasonably stringently the model out there of VIA in Switzerland, where we have the community, or Wirtschaftring, which is the community circle of trust, or business circle, where we all deal with each other and we can trade within each other. And if we have to move out from the circle, I've created something called an IOU, which is called an international outreach unit. So it might be, the builder over there, he doesn't want to take re-units, so he wants payment in sterling. So what we'll do is we'll facilitate that changeover by getting to you something like a sterling payment so you can bring that product in.
If, as a landlord, if somebody wants to
All right, mate. Thank you.
be a landlord but actually have half the payment in sterling and half it in RE, how do you do that?
Okay, so the question is if there's a landlord that is willing to take a payment in sterling or RE or 50-50, if they're prepared to take that payment, then that's fine. But it comes back to the person. Why we have to do it this way is, for example, the analogy or the example then of your brother or whoever wants to buy a house. We could say yes. The guy who's selling it might say yes, and it might be free and clear. You know, he might not owe anything and he might not have a mortgage on it. But how do we get the land registry to put the title deeds over to him? It might be difficult. So with anybody that's got a mortgage, no matter how small or outstanding it is, the problem is it's much easier for us to take a defensive position than a position of attack. Because we can kick and scream and say, oh no, you've got to do it because this is valid. But they just sit there, it's our system, we set it up, we don't have to do anything you say. And this is what we have at the moment. The bank's sitting there saying, we don't have to clear these checks. We don't have to do anything about that. Because they're not taking it, they're not taking it serious, or they're taking it too serious, or they haven't processed it through a court or a tribunal. And so that's why they sit there and impartially say.
At the moment, they're saying that he's aware to have a mortgage and use his cheques. Is it working for people to write the cheques who pay a mortgage?
Yeah, many have done it. It's the first thing they've been doing. 142,000 here, 60,000 there. I had someone phone up the other day, I think it was Santander, and that was a check-in for a mortgage payment of 110,000. They're asking how to clear it. Okay, so how many of those, after the conversation with me and me confirming under what's called, I think it's section 74A of the Deregulation Bills of Exchange Act 1996, what's called alternate means of presentment, an alternate place of presentment, it can be presented and cleared over the phone. So very few have come actually sending us physically the checks, because why would they? What they should be doing, if they're doing that, is sending a photocopy. So most of it's been over the phone, a few have come in over fax, and those have been duly answered and said it's clear. But the vast majority have not come back and are not asking. Initially it was very, very active, and we were told that Barclays and all these people had a bit of a powwow between them and said they weren't going to deal with us. But that doesn't make it go away. The instruments are still there. Certain people are saying they've just been cleared. Accounting departments maybe are firing them through and they're actually clearing them down. So at the moment it's reasonably early days to say, but like all these things, they don't speak to me. I can't really confirm it all, but there's sufficient people out there giving a reasonable appreciation and update to show that they are being cleared, especially council tax.
We're having a referee note.
Yeah.
How can we get you the promissory note so that you have that to purpose?
How do you get that?
How do we get a promissory note to you for this 150 or whatever?
Yeah, it goes to the address on the. Is it on the site? I'm not sure if it is actually. Yeah, just to the Weir Bank. There was, and there will be probably by tomorrow night, because it's one of the things I wanted to get put back up again. Okay, just let's go for this gentleman here again.
Sorry, Peter. I apologise to you.
It's your last question, by the way.
Oh, I do have one more. I apologise to you and I apologise to everyone else if I'm a bit slow. Can you tell me why a mortgage can be, described as a public debt that the state is imposing upon you?
Yeah, quite easily. I'll do it in 5 seconds. I'll do it in 10. The banks control everything. The banks pay the politicians. It's a monopolistic environment, and therefore it's all part of what's called The public side of the debt is that since 1931, when we came off the gold standard, a line of credit was promised to you but was never delivered. And that line of credit should have been your ability to pay off all debts, like it said on the American dollar, all debts, it still says, all debts public and private. Okay? So the banking mechanism is part of the government's plan to rack up debt in return for taxation rights that you are then counted on by supposedly being told you live in a democracy and exchanging your vote for that. So that's why if you look, for example, look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, various articles of what was promised in 1944 as part of the Bretton Woods Agreement that all peoples of the world would be entitled to. A means of living commensurate with their existing standard of living. The right to healthcare, the right to accommodation and a home. So all of this was promised by the banking cartel in 1944 to ensure that the 44 sovereign nations that were parties and signatories to it came on board. And out of that came the net that you were all then covered under. So you might think the banks are privately run, do you? But they're not. It's the tentacled monster sitting even above the government. Governments need money to get elected. Politicians, every single one of them has to be bought and paid for before they're in office. You don't get in unless you're compromised, unless they've got film of you doing whatever it is that you supposedly would storm Parliament to get at them to prevent. And they've got that, and that's why, once you're in, why paedophilia is used as the kerosene on the fire for the public, but to compromise all of them, including gay Obama, that you step very carefully, or we'll leak it and we'll put it out. So the politicians are always subservient to that which is above it, and it's the Vatican, Holy Roman Empire, Rothschild, Jesuit cap that holds it all together, with unum sanctum and all the rest that's covered. So that's why you have to look and separate out the public from the private. If you and me want to do something now, I've got a bottle of water, give me £1. It's between you and me. That's a private transaction. Once you're in the public domain, that isn't the way it is. The public domain is the public pushing it, the public domain UK Treasury pushing it on you. You have no choice. You don't have a choice of banks. You can't go to a bank that doesn't have interest, unless you went to one maybe under Sharia law, that they don't impose interest. So you're captive within a monopolistic environment with no external avoidance. And so that's why the bankers, par excellence, force you to go into a 25-year mort death engagement for that, to wrap you up in debt so you can't budge. And that's the worst straitjacket that anyone ever gets to pay. Because if you dispense with your rent and you dispense with your mortgage, what do you have to worry about? You'd have nothing. You could go and sit in the fields and smoke all day and order Domino's pizzas. And that would be perfect, you see. But they don't want you to do that. It's part of why they've introduced the famine in Ireland from, what was it, 1948 to 62. Because the British government looked at the Irish and they're just sitting around all day eating potatoes with cream on them and taking the peat and their kind of nice existence. But it wasn't profitable, so they changed it. Sorry, this young man here.
Yeah, can these cheques be used to pay off a bankrupt debt?
Yes.
They can be. How would they be enforced in this?
If you've already been made bankrupt,
yes. What would tell you?
It all probably depends how long you've been bankrupt, because you can get out of bankruptcy within 6 months. And I don't know whether are you discharged, or not you, or are they already in it?
They're in the bank. If the person's in the bankruptcy and hasn't yet to be discharged, and they want to use the cheque to pay it, how would you be enforceable for? How would, when they say, have you made the payment?
Yeah, it comes back to the entire argument, so everybody can get this clear. If you're in a defensive posture, you can have your shield and you can have your sword and you can sit like that, yeah, or like a thorn on a bush, yeah. It's like it's a passive instrument. A porcupine, a tortoise. It resists things getting at it. But to go the other way is a greater risk, because if you're a lion or a tiger or a predator, you've actually physically got to go after these things. So it's always difficult to force them to do something. So for example, you're in a state of bankruptcy, what you've got them to get them now is to sign a statement to say you're discharged. Right? I don't know whether they will do it, I don't know whether they won't do it. But that's always the ultimate resistance that they have. So as to yes, do it, but you can't force them. Maybe people who paid off the mortgage, maybe the guy who told you about the revenue said 92,000 is successfully paid off the tax bill. To actually get them to put it in writing.
What about an affidavit? Posting them on that?
No, I wouldn't go down any of that. Just don't bother with them. Just as far as you're concerned, you're in a totally clean, pure system. Don't dance with them and don't start getting into this, the old either you writing one or asking them to write one. I just, for now, just keep hitting them with the payments, because that's ultimately what it's about. I know one or two people made comments, well, isn't that abrogating your claim to be, sovereign, or why go along with their game? Well, it's the only game they know, and at the moment, to go the other way, they hold everything. But when we get more powerful, as we will in the months, it'll dissolve away, because ultimately there's more energy in this room now to formulate this than there has been in any other room, I would say, with the idea of what the new tool that we've got is. Probably in the last, decade, it could have been longer.
Peter, Paula wants that.
Yeah.
You're saying about public and private. Now, if you've got a company, then that's in the public, because obviously you've got the directors and everything else. Why can't you give your...
No, the company's in the private.
Right.
Because what you need not to, you shouldn't confuse the fact that if you set up a company, you've registered it with Companies House. You've appointed a secretary, you've appointed a treasurer maybe, you've appointed a director, and so it's your little private engagement within their public trust. Okay? So if you're trying to make payments to who? To someone within the company?
No, because the company itself.
No, it won't, because you're paying yourself.
Right.
It's a bit similar to, at this point it's it's not a small point. Various people have come a bit of a cropper with trying to pay off their mortgage, and the cheques being returned, but the bank have been telling them to make the cheques payable to themselves. Is anybody aware of that?
Yeah, a friend of mine.
Yeah. So it asks, or beggars the question, if when you're asking them from a redemption figure to pay off your mortgage in its entirety, why are they telling you to make the cheque payable to yourself and not, supposedly, the people who lent it you, like Barclays or Santander? So,
selling it on people.
yeah, so I would, all these things are coming out, so the more you beat the carpet, the more the mites come out. So there's all sorts of theories why, but just stick to the guns and don't really argue the toss with them. And also, just in case people haven't in this room heard it before, if they're making an accusation that it's fraudulent, or that Weir Bank doesn't have any money, or they phoned to present and we've refused it, then not only do you have the notorial protest, which we could just make it very simple. You know, you're protesting it because they refused and they stated X, Y, Z, Y. But maybe send another small letter to them demanding that that person that you spoke to, or who returned the letter, or whatever, that they just put 3 lines together saying what day they phoned, who they spoke to, and what reason was given, under full commercial liability under penalty of perjury, because you want to bring a criminal prosecution against us, me. And that's as good as I can offer, because then they're going to have to step up and put it in writing as a named person. So this isn't shielding them now behind, you know, Santander corporate or Barclays head of legal, whatever. That's that person making an accusation that they can't back up and will never be able to back up. And so that's that. So this chap here.
2 questions, Peter. The 1% tax you were talking about, does that differ from the TEAL tax, Total Economic Activity Levy?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the first question is the FOCT tax. Yeah. Financial Commercial UK Transaction Tax. I do like using that word because I like what it implies to them. This gentleman said, is it equivalent to TEAL, which was the
Bob Shanbrook.
It was the other chap who was hiking it around as his own with Reset.
Paul Randall.
Paul Randall Jolliffe. Anybody know him? Okay, and he'd got it out of the United States. It used to be called the Robin Hood tax over there. And so the short answer to the question, is it the same, is exactly, but slightly different. So it isn't a new one, it's mirrored on it. But what the main, I suppose, difference, but it didn't really get into the nitty-gritty as he explained it. This is actually directed towards the financial commercial side and not directed necessarily to the private individual. So though you might eventually have to pick that up, well, he used the analogy, I think, of a transaction from an ATM. But so we make it quite clear, it doesn't apply to us. So you're not paying an extra 1% on anything, because the logic has to be, with all the taxation that there is out there already, if you're going to join with us, I mean, when I say us, then to put another tax onto you,
well,
even though at a 1%,
I think the idea is that you would start off with it, and then as the money comes in, you would then say, right, we've got sufficient amount of money, we can get rid of one of the current taxes.
Yeah, there's absolutely no necessity for tax. If there's going to be anything levied, then it comes in as a fee for the work. The model for Via Bank in Switzerland, it's exactly that. No taxation on it apart from what they maybe have to deliver to the Swiss government. They come in, and if you want a loan or if you need a service from the bank, they charge a flat fee on it.
Second question.
Just the second question.
On one of your YouTube videos, it mentions about the $1 trillion toxic debt you got from the American banks.
Yeah.
How has that affected how will it affect?
Yeah, it's a good question. It was there to make a point quite long ago, because the people that I was sort of working with before was an organisation I've mentioned a few times before, which never really got off the ground for various reasons. It's called Global Settlement Foundation, GSF, and then we were also looking at other ways of bringing in sort of alternative money supply in. So when debt assumption was running, Freeman Legal Services, where debt assumption had come from is that I think it's the 1769 Foundation Act of the United States in Washington, there were various, under that act, I think it might have been called the Assumption Act actually, something like that, what they did is they assumed all the debt of the federal states when they were actually trying to then put the United States then constitutionally together. And so they weren't burdened with all this debt at the beginning, so there is actually a precedence for it, and it's basically debt forgiveness. So the idea is that if on the books of the bank the only asset is debt, it must be worth something. Because all their pots of money that you put in, or if you do, are liabilities, because they have to pay out on it. So what a bizarre world that they live on, and they've convinced us to live in, that those who have nothing but a debt obligation over for the future have obscene amount. That's it. That's the most expensive commodity they can have, because what they've got is your energy promises over time to work for them. And so ultimately the game isn't about money, it's about energy theft. And so they want you running on the wheel forever, mindlessly distracted, so that you can't figure out what's going on and therefore can't do anything about it. And that's really what this game is. It doesn't matter how much money goes through Hollywood or why they pay footballers $200,000 a week. You know, there's a lot going on, and money, if you're looking to take charge of a planet, has got no consequence whatsoever.
Debt-free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
Okay, there's a question.
It's just confetti on a Xerox printer. And then, okay.
Sorry, it's me again. On the first meeting you said about insurance. How far are we with that?
Yeah, okay, another question on insurance. We have, because of the hiccup that we had when the website was sort of, yeah, I don't know. There's a story about the website, and when I actually find the full story, the person that was involved in pulling the plug, if I actually find out that he panicked, and it wasn't that the government, I think they said that the government had placed some, I don't know, lockdown order on it. But if I find out that that's not correct, then I'll actually reveal the details of that to everyone. But for now, let's just say it was all as it seemed. But since that point, the question was the insurance, yeah. What's going to be rolled out when we're in the process now of getting some streetwear, clothing, identifiable stuff that you can turn up at Tom's sort of hearings in, and if you like it, more people will be able to wear it, or badges. So we actually have an identifiable, when you want to, uniform that you don't have to argue the toss to too many people. They will know immediately, and I'm talking about this, the authorities, so-called, they'll know exactly where you're coming from and what your intentions and ideas are, and that will speak volumes, you know, because people driving, they see McDonald's signs, and they're driving through the desert in Nevada and immediately see the signs and think, oh great, you know, fries, a Coke, burger, ooh, cheese, great. It just goes through their mind so quick, you don't need to spell it all out. So ultimately this is what is needed. It's always historically been required. And so people that know on the streetwear, the logo for RE is, everybody's seen it, it's the R, and then there's the little foot. Now, it's what's called a bind rune. So there's 2 runes there, the 5th rune, Rido, or Rado, and then the 17, which is Tiawaz. And Tiawaz is basically, if anyone's old enough to remember in the old days, the old prison and government product, had like a squashed arrow on it. So that denoted possession, and it also is what's called a supreme victory rune, and along with the lightning bolt, you know, the S, which the SS used on their logo, twin lightning flashes, The rooms have always been used, or have historically been used, for various purposes, but these are very charged with a very particular energy, and they were put together in 2006. And Jolliffe and his Reset crowd, when they took the Re, anybody seen their logo? That Re thing that they turned and put on a green background? I warned them, when I gave it to them, that if they used it without me being involved in it, it would go nowhere. And that came to be. So they'll only work with, because they were created, you know, you bring them into being. And so R for Rido is basically a cyclical revolutionary cycle. It's the harvest, it's the winter, the fall, it's the eternal sort of, you know, is it Erebus, the serpent eating its own tail as it turns. And then the other part, the Tiawaz, Tiawaz is from the god Tyr. And I think it's Tuesday.
That's right.
Okay? And that's named after the god Tyr, and Tyr was one of the gods that sacrificed his hand into the mouth of the wolf named Fenris, so that the other gods could escape. So this mythical creature, this wolf, Tyr came up to him, put his hand in and let the wolf consume the hand. So it's got something a little bit sort of humanitarian, a little bit of this.
Questions insurance.
Yeah, we're getting on to, we're coming back to the insurance. So we've done the Re, and so that's what the logo is charged. So with the insurance, that'll be coming on the side, and the idea is that all members will be given a certificate prepared for them, giving them third-party coverage. We might do fully comp. Third-party insurance on their vehicle, and it'll be any vehicle that you can drive. That's how it's done on the continent, by the way. You don't have to have it for a specific vehicle. You take out insurance, and I can get in your car and drive it. I can get in your car and drive it. And what that will be is there'll be. That's under, I think it's section 1441 of the Road Traffic Act 1988.
I'll pay that for that.
Gives something called an exemption from third-party insurance, and that's if you lodge funds with the Accountant General of the Senior Courts. So a cheque for 500,000 will be delivered. We'll therefore become like Westminster Council, the police, the ambulance service. The whole thing is just covered under one cheque, and it's funny money anyway. They haven't got cash to that amount ever. Who's got 500,000 in cash? Used to be 50, and so that's what will cover people. And what we need before that is the book or the logo or something to go with it, so you're not continuing getting into a pissing match up the side of the road when they try and seize your vehicle under SOCA for being involved in serious organised crime. Because there's no organised crime, you know, when they seize it now, and they do have the right not to under these things called Japan principles, but a lot of people don't know that, and this is why, so a long-winded answer to a very good question, which I hope is answered, and then we'll go on to let this chap first, who reminds me of my friend.
Yeah, continuation of section 143, 144 of the Road Traffic Act, can you study that? Because that's the first thing I thought about when we did one of these checks. Problem is, it's at their discretion. They have the discretion to raise that to $1 million and beyond in certain circumstances that they don't want to define.
Yeah, and it's a very good point, because also you are supposedly have to get the permission of the Attorney General, I think, or the Lord Chancellor, before the courts will accept it. So
and they could refuse that.
They could refuse it. However, this is as much a mind game and a play, and I'm not saying that they're answers and they're going to work every time, but what we've got to get into is ways of challenging it all. And partly, whether Weir Bank worked or not, whatever came out of the checks going out, it was primarily as much to make people aware that there might be an alternative way of going, and to actually put enough pepper up the, you know, the noses of the wolf or the status quo to make them think. So don't forget, everyone that takes this route now, there's energy required. Can you imagine how much energy has been expended by all these banking places, and what do we do with it, and do we send it there or do we clear? So it's all taking energy, and while they're turning their heads on that and not deciding, then there are other things that are coming along. So there'll be more and more, you know, and quite more interesting things coming along. But for now, we can only do the insurance when we've got a reasonably established base. But it will be very good, because insurance is just a penalty on a contingency, and it's no more than a tax. Because, you know, everybody says, well, what happens if? But what happens if not? And invariably, when they had me in court for not having insurance, if you actually find out, anybody know what on average for a private vehicle, the repair bill after an accident for a car is? Any? 10 grand? No, it's quite a lowish figure. It's around about 12 to 1400 quid. And when you think, don't have an accident for 3 years, paying in what? I don't know what people are paying in. I mean, insurance, 400 or 500 a year, is that about average? Yeah? And also, so they go on about, oh, what happens if you hit this, what happens if you hit that. Invariably, you know, it's quite contentious, the levels that are required, but, you know, we have enough to cover more than that for our customer clientele, member base, whatever you call it. And so just to remember, predominantly what you're doing here is joining a movement which has a bank and an employment agency welded to it. You're not really, I know we're all talking about the banking side of it, but primarily it's the movement, it's the thing charged with this energy that's taken us forward, that just so happens to have a banking utility attached to it, which then can credit you. Okay.
Quick question on comm rates. Two quick questions. Is if we're outside of the system, why do we need a national insurance number on it?
Yeah, it's a good point.
And the other one, alongside that, why are we limited to 150,000?
Two good points. Okay, so the first question was, why do we have to have the national insurance number on the promissory note? And the second, why limited to 150?
Yeah, just
okay, so the first question, why the national insurance? Because we're operating on the public side,
right,
not the private. So what we've done is, conversely to how I initially went along, but I am still in, I've done this affidavit and I've done my distancing and I've done the second affidavit and then I've done the estoppel by acquiescence. I've gone down that entire route. Most people haven't done it. Yeah? Very few people have done it. It just can't be bothered, or it's a bit too convoluted, or it takes quite a while. But I did all that before I even went out in the vehicle with the plates on the very first day. So if you're going down the, you know, I'm Dave of the family of wherever, then you might see the hypocrisy and the absolute aversion to doing something like that. But if we're on the public side, so you've got your public straw man thing on, there's no problem of you paying down from the prepaid treasury on the public side. So it's only there as an identifier, because in effect, under what's like the consolidated fund and the the Chancellor of the Exchequer's fiduciary rights towards you, it's all wrapped up on that side of the equation, on the public side, the birth certificate. So if we get into this arguing about all of that, they're never going to let you. They're never going to come and go, oh wow, yeah, you've just discovered the entire plot. So that's why it could have been a passport number. It could have been anything. It just so happens we went down that route because most people have it, and we can therefore actually say quite categorically that individual, yeah, is in the UK, or you know, if it's an SS number from America, that they do exist, and that's the reason. And then the other one, why we're limited to 150,000, It just seemed to me to be a reasonably sized amount for most people on a defensive engagement against this threat to be able to pay stuff down. I don't know, who's got a mortgage here of over 150,000? God. So I miscalculated that one. So
times by 4 and you get it.
okay, so that's really, and to make it almost, to be quite honourable and realistic, so that we weren't seen to be creative. Because the conversation we had slightly out there before was that if we just made it an indiscriminate number, or we say, oh, let's do 500 million.
Well, yeah, it's not believable then, is it?
They're going to look, how these people ever, who would ever give that? And so not only would we have the pressure, we'd have the other pressure of going, you know, this Peter of England, like the Quatlu said, he's now off selling left-hand screwdrivers to people. But, you know, so, you know, they haven't got the brains. Even the people, even these banking people who are phoning up have no idea, fortunately, how this works. They haven't looked at it. They've scanned it. I had this argument with the HSBC legal department, and the guy was going, no, and I said, just, you know, you just be quiet. Do you want to get paid, or do you want to give me a hard time over this? Because if they want to clear the debts, there's nowhere else. There is no liquidity in the market that you people can deliver. Sorry, that they can receive that you people can't deliver. It doesn't exist. And the beauty of it is, you haven't had to take out more debt from them to do it. All you've done is, you stepped over the line, you've created your own world, and then you've just said, okay. So you've almost done what they've done to you, but in reverse. Yeah? They gave you the illusion you were in the private, but they saddled you in the public with, don't forget what the national debt is. The GDP, the national debt of this country is legally, from their point of view, attached to you as a liability, and that you have a covenant with them to pay it off. And in return for them protecting you and looking after you, then that's it. That's the deal. So you step away from it and you say, no, we don't really engage in that anymore. And though it's a few in number at the moment, when it becomes a big enough problem, the next thing will be belating of, well, if everybody did it, how would we pay for this? How would we pay for the NHS? Well, let's make a gesture in a few months, and how much do the NHS claim they want to rectify it? 2 billion? We'll make a charitable donation to them.
See, I've had a couple of good successes and a couple of, I paid off my HMRC income tax, £6,300.
Right.
Gone. My council tax paid off for the rest of the year. Gone. The only thing I have had from is utility warehouse.
I've had them at all.
And they're just flatly refusing it. And I've done a no good process, wait for that to come back. It turns out they're actually banked with Barclays.
Yeah.
I've also sent off a cheque for a small amount, 34,000. Not a small amount,
nice to have money, huh?
To Barclays, all my mortgage, right? And they've refused it as well. So what I say is, Barclays seems to be not playing ball.
Yeah, no,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, okay.
Barclays are very well connected with PayPal.
Yeah.
And in fact, PayPal wasn't
Well, that's
invented
what
through
makes
the
sense,
Bilderbergers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they won't speak to you at all. They won't give you any indication whatsoever.
Yeah, and
there's
this
a Bilderberg meeting coming up very soon.
Yeah.
And you can bet your bottom dollar.
Yeah, I hope we're on the agenda. So as you can see there, I wasn't aware of this. So when people ask me what's cleared and what hasn't, my main problem is when I have to switch the phone on about 8:30 every morning. You know, the first week it was very. How can I describe it? It's very wearing and quite stressful. You know, because though I've got the answers, when you've got this banking institution asking you all these strange questions about, you know, and how do you make out that you can do that, and are you registered with Nuclear Clearing, or why not? And I think you should better inform your customers because they're confused because they think they can just pay for anything with it, you know. And I'm going, well, you know, thank you for showing such concern, but You know, you're not really here to give some sort of psychotherapy to the customers from us, just and to look at this. So it's very, very difficult to handle it all the time, but none of them, apart from shouting and saying, the one thing they say every time, the sort code's invalid. But the sort code isn't invalid. The sort code is attached to the only place that they can make clearing.
That's what Barker said to me. They sent it back a letter saying it's obviously issued from an old chequebook. Please reissue from a new chequebook.
Yeah. Okay. So just so that you understand the clearing system, when the checks, normal checks in that world, when those checks get fired into the bank, the teller puts it together and then they send it to UK clearing. The UK clearing system just sends it like the GPO through these machines that scan it. And so what happens then, all the regularities get scanned, and then what gets done is it pings down to the local branch. So it isn't actually cleared at UK clearing, it gets pinged down like an ATM check, or when you go into Tesco and you put your card in the machine, it goes through and it clears in your branch. Yeah? And it has to be that way because only that branch knows how much money you supposedly have entered into the account. It's not to say there's backup data kept in, you know, Barclays HQ or wherever, but it's the local branch that clears. And it's always been the same. It can only be your local branch that will be able to clear it. So when they say it hasn't cleared, they haven't got in touch with us, otherwise we would have automatically cleared it. All they're trying to say is, this is what they say, that the sort code number isn't registered with UK clearing. But that doesn't mean anything. That just means we haven't joined their golf club, so we can't play golf. It's quite ridiculous. Okay, how much longer are you going to let me keep answering questions for? Right, hang on. I'll come back to you in a moment. Let's come to.
You said that you've got a 15 checkbook deficit at the moment, and you anticipate the next round of checkbooks to be delivered?
Okay, so the question is, there's a deficit, and when will the next checkbooks be delivered? We've already ordered it, so I would think probably could be Wednesday, it may be Friday of next week. It's a bank holiday on Monday, isn't it? Oh, bank holiday, what a joke. So probably by the end of next week, and then what I'd say is this website, as it's going to develop, is going to be the sweetest thing. We've got for the first time, we've got some very switched on people behind it. And these people used to be involved in GSM networks and call center networks, you know, and so there's some very good data capture that we're bringing in, and that means we can push this stuff out to you and just drip feed you as we go along. So yeah, probably in about a week, and then we will then clear the backlog, and then we'll put the rest out to you. Yeah, that gentleman there.
Regarding the payment, the £10 monthly to you, have you considered postal order?
Postal order.
Postal order is very easy. It doesn't have to. You don't need to go there with your identity. You can go to the post office, give them the postal order, and get the cash in your hand.
Yeah, and that works, does it?
Answer was already mentioned.
So, uncrossed postal order, and the other one this lady mentioned was the MoneyGram, yeah?
MoneyGram, yes.
Okay, so that's something we can look into it. And what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to set something in action that was then going to have to be written down again, and then we go on to the next one. So the good thing is. I don't know.
Yeah.
How much do you pay on a £10 postal order? Any idea?
£1.
10%.
£1.
Yeah, it's probably only about what PayPal take off.
10%.
Those, and just so you know that I have every intention of upsetting PayPal.
We've got 5 more minutes and that's it.
Right, okay, last 5 minutes, so there's a few. This one here.
I was just going to say, the problem you've got with postal orders is if you walk into the post office with a stack of postal orders, you're going to raise eyebrows.
Yeah, okay, so that's a good question. Like everything that's going to happen here, with the sheer volume of having them and trying to cash, because what was happening with Nationwide before they pulled the account, the times I was going in to try and get money out, eventually they started looking at me a bit strange, you know, he's coming in quite regular. And then just before the end, they even asked me for my passport identity and put the details into their computer. And then within a couple of days, that... Okay, young lady.
I'm sorry if you answered this already, but I just wanted to clear up. Lots of people have been saying various things, and there's some attachment in terms of a Malaysian bank and also something else, Chicago bonds. So I just would like you to be able to clear up what the backing is.
Okay, the lady's just asked a question about Malaysian bank and some type of bonds. On the old Weir Bank website, there used to be a notification there that what had happened is a Malaysian, it's not a bank, it's a Malaysian syndicate, had hypothecated, which means pledged, to us until and as when they can get those redeemed by the United States Treasury, or the Federal Reserve actually, 500 billion US dollars in what's called 1934 Chicago Federal Reserve gold-backed certificates. And these certificates were issued from 1934 through to about 44, but most around 33 to 34, with Roosevelt's Gold Confiscation Act, 1933, in a ploy to get gold brought into the United States in preparation of funding the proposed war that came out of the blue supposedly, but don't forget what was happening in Germany through 1925 through to. So those certificates have been verified as genuine and real. A company that was involved in it is Ackerman, who are a large multinational. But that, by the by, what they have said is that we can use those as, let's say, pledged collateral. And what that is primarily to do, as well to stimulate debate, is to open up the degree of corruption, the degree of theft, and to show that these things existed and that they are the secret underpinning of the global banking duplicity and fraud. Hope that answers that. Did I answer the question?
Yes, it's just that...
So it's not a bank, it's a syndicate. I spent all of last year trying to get those redeemed, and I think, well, it's the Chinese that were trying to redeem those, but the US Federal Reserve, or US Federal Reserve says quite openly, or look at the YouTube video, they have not had any gold deposits really since 1934, and that was in a congressional investigation when Bernanke and all the lot were hauled in after 2008 by not Rand Paul, who's the other guy? Ron Paul. Yeah, so have a look at that. Okay.
Mine's more practical questions. One, you know when you say you're successful certain projects, certain different councils, will that information be put on the bank so we can use that as a avenue? London District Council's taking it, so basically.
Yeah.
The other one is about paying fee. Do you know where we're sent for as promissory notes?
Yeah, in Manchester, 83, yeah.
Certain people's not going to be able to come travelling with a kid. Is that capable of accepting letters to be signed? Can the letters be signed when received?
Yeah, I mean the mailing point, there's no problem with that. It's just that for now, I mean the address is the address, but I prefer if we can we just have meetings to make collections, and I know it's not so practical, but if, as suggested earlier, we have regular, and then what it can even be is someone else can take over the meetings, and you have your own cell. Because what is looked for eventually is that you do this as your group, because you don't need much. I mean, what we can do then is we'll clone the wearebank.com and we'll just regionalise it to the Nottingham one, and it'll say We're Bank then Nottingham. You know what I mean? So we cascade it under, and then there'll be one in Warrington, and then there'll be one somewhere else. So those people who want to get involved in it, and don't forget you will be paid, will come into the structure of building it initially, however we see it can be built, and then on and on. So
then on the also, so if I send the premises on.
We're running out of time, so can we just leave it to the one question?
Yeah.
Lady, and that's it.
I have a national insurance number and a social security number, so can I use my British account to pay for things in America? Or do I have to set two separate accounts?
No, you can do, where's your birth certificate registered?
Here.
Then use that one here. Okay, and then this young lady here.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, I've watched your videos about PAYE and everyone paying income tax and how it's illegal because of the Terrorism Act. And I just wonder what your feelings are about using the checks to pay income tax and PAYE.
Yeah, it's something that I lay awake for about half a second considering. And it's very, it's the conundrum question, because ultimately it's what's better to do it, to have a difficult life and have them to take you to court when they have everything on their side. They will bankrupt you, they will force you into, it's quite incredible, the councils, for not paying your poll tax or your council tax, can actually put you in prison for it, So the HMRC are the worst of the bunch. They're the enforcement goons par excellence to make sure that the government, whip is listened to. So it's a choice, It's like, don't pay it, and you end up with, but look how many people don't pay. You're all in a minority, We're not even, even if another 200 people join tomorrow and 400 then, we're still such a tiny amount. We're not even scratching the back of anything. So the option then is whether you pay it or whether you fight it. And I just thought, well, hell with them. They're asking for it. It's not right. It's not just. So put something, like one of these blowfish down their throat that they can't spit out, or and that's it. So argue with it, because ultimately it's just they want to clear all of this. It's got to be cleared. They've got to have it brought in, and as it doesn't suit, it's just like them stipulating what type of ice cream they want. It's either ice cream or it's not ice cream, and if it's ice cream, then the flavour shouldn't be too much of a
We're actually just offsetting debt, that's all.
Yeah.
We're just balancing the book.
And you must remember, everything, I put this in, it was in the other one, everything out there is a result of you and your historical, ancestral march from day one on the planet to produce everything here.
Yeah.
You've done it, they haven't. That very, very, very small elitist faction, like a tick on the back of a dog, have just sucked it. And they'll stay there and you scratch and you can't, yeah? So this is the time to get rid of it. And it has to be done, otherwise the evolutionary cycle of all of us just gets bogged down in another what? What should we do? Should we do another 50 or another 100 years of it? Yeah, that's not long enough. Why don't we do another 1,000? But there won't be an opportunity much longer, because if they get all of their technology in, and if they get the cashless society, you won't really be bothered whether you have to have an RFID chip. They'll just disconnect everything, and you can't play, you can't do anything, you can't buy the bread. Anyway, very, very final
Just one quick one. There's a lady by the name of Anne Barnhart who's on YouTube, and she's American, and she's a bit extreme because she wants to hang them all as well. But she gives about 7 or 8 videos, absolutely a really excellent explanation of what's been happening and how he's been conned to everything. And it really is worth looking up.
Okay,
It's
and
quite-
Barnard.
And Barnhart. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, okay, so thank you very much, that's it.
Debt Free TV, in association with GetOutOfDebtFree.org.